Chapter 1. The Seventh Swordsman. Genjutsu Hozuki clenched his fist. The second Mizukage was not a happy man these days. It was due to multiple reasons, most important of them being the fact that he was losing a war. His village was on the back foot, unable to fight against the combined might of Land of Earth and Land of Lightning. The Second Ninja War had started with a great promise for Kiri, but like other great nations, it had also suffered due to the chaos. The second Hokage was dead. So was the second Raikage. Yet both Konoha and Kyumo had plenty of skilled shinobi to fight on despite the fall of their leaders. Both nations had great armies which they were using ruthlessly to carve each other up. Meanwhile, Kiri was locked in a dual war against Kyumo and IWA. It had just been 2 months since the war began, and already thousands of shinobi were dead, at least 1,000 from Kiri's own lands. The death toll didn't only include the common shinobi ranks, but also Anbu, hunter ninjas, and even most of the 7 great swordsmen. Genjutsu cursed his own petty rivalry with the second Tsuchikage that made him take impulsive decisions that led to the deaths of 4 of his 7 great ninja swordsmen at the hands of Mu and his student Anoki. Now, Kiri was on the back foot with its strength dwindling and the shinobi morale collapsing as news of 4 of their strongest falling to enemy hands reached the masses. But Genjutsu was not one to give up so easily. Despite the losses, he knew Kiri had plenty of skilled fighters in its ranks. Men and women ready to fight for their motherland and honor their fallen comrades. It was from them that he had already chosen 3 of the 4 vacant spots in the ranks of the 7 ninja swordsmen. A woman from the hunter corps who would now wield Nuabari, sewing needle. Her ice release and sharp instincts would make her the perfect new master of the blade now that its former wielder was slain. He had chosen 2 of his most powerful and dangerous jounin to wield Samahata, shark skin, and Kubi Kurobocho, executioner blade. Their violent nature and monstrous power would serve them well in handling those dangerous swords. Amuri Ringo was still serving him faithfully as the master of the twin blades Kiba, Fangs. While Mangetsu Hozuki, his own son and heir, wielded Kabutawari, Helmet Splitter. Genjutsu knew his son had potential not just to lead the Hozuki clan in the future, but also Kiri with his power and cunning. Jinpachi Munashi had survived his battle against the Tsuchikage with his blade Shibuki, Splash, and was eager to blow his enemies to oblivion despite the wounds he sustained. Unfortunately, the last of the holy blades Hiramakiri was destroyed alongside its master when he fell in battle against Mu, the second Tsuchikage. The loss of the swordsman was a heavy blow, but the destruction of one of the 7 holy blades was an unforgivable sin, one which the people of Kiri would make IWA repent in blood for. Unfazed, Genjutsu had ordered the creation of a new sword. In order to make his mark in history, he decided to create twin swords, but while the Kiba, Fangs, allowed its master power over lightning and destruction, he wanted these new blades to be the embodiment of his own rage, which was swift and brutal. His weaponsmiths had outdone themselves and prepared a dangerous weapon. Now, the Mizukage had to find the one most suited to wield them. Learning from his mistakes, the second Mizukage had chosen his greatest swordsmen not just for their power, but also for their personality. He looked at his sides and observed the 6 dangerous swordsmen watching the arena below them with different expressions across their faces. Zabuza, Kisame, Jinpachi, and Amuri were excited for the fights that were happening. The 4 of them were the most fiercest among the group and stroked fear in the hearts of the enemy when they stepped on the battlefield. While Haku and Mangetsu didn't betray any of their feelings and impassively watched the battles happening below them, but in their sharp eyes, the Mizukage saw a keen intelligence as they searched for the one who shall join their group. Genjutsu himself nodded proudly at the 6 of them. They were not just powerful shinobi, but were soon going to be his trusted lieutenants who shall lead Kiri's army to a glorious victory against their enemies. It was why he frowned on seeing the senseless slaughter happening below in the arena. His veteran gaze caught sight of quite a few Anbu, hunter ninjas, jounin, chunin fighting to the death in order to make themselves immortal in Kiri's history by becoming the 7th swordsman. Many of them had already died or were badly injured in their quest to achieve eternal glory. More would soon follow. Jinjetsu sighed when he saw one of the hunter ninja butcher two jounin in a hail of poisoned needles. The two men dropped dead instantly, just as two jounin joined forces together and stabbed a lone umbu. However, their victory was short-lived as the dying umbu beheaded them both before falling on the ground. They really don't understand, do they? Asked Mangetsu with a sigh. It would seem that they believe the strongest and most brutal shall gain place among us, lamented Haku bitterly, earning a snort from Jinpachi and Amuri, the oldest serving members of their group. That's the way of the mist, brats. You would do well to remember, warned Jinpachi fiercely. This is a tradition even you had to go through, and so shall every other swordsman of the future, reminded Amuri, earning dark smirks from Zabuza and Kisame. Even as the group squabbled amongst themselves, Jinjetsu's attention was diverted towards the dying umbu on the ground. The jounins had skewered his lungs and neck, leaving no room for recovery. Watching him choke and drown in his own blood was a gruesome sight, and made the Mizukage wonder as to why he even agreed to allow this tradition to happen. It would be acceptable in times of peace, but he needed every shinobi during this war. But he also knew he had to tread a careful line with Kiri's elite ninja clans who preferred the old ways and tradition even if it was senseless at times. If he was to win this war, it would be best if he sated the desires of those clans. Being a Kage was a bloody, gruesome business, after all. However, he was surprised when another man dressed in umbu gear stepped before the dying umbu. The new shinobi was a tall man with shining blonde hair and sharp blue eyes hidden behind his plain umbu mask. He was dressed in traditional umbu gear and black pants with gauntlets protecting his arms. He wore fingerless gloves, and Jinjetsu saw a face mask protecting the skin of the man behind the umbu mask. In his hands was a traditional sword. To the Mizukage's surprise, the dying umbu weakly raised his fist before thumping it against his chest. That stopped the squabbling amongst the people beside the Mizukage as they all saw the strange scene. A salute. The blonde umbu gave a single nod of acknowledgement before he slashed his sword. Most fighters would have missed the attack, but not the Mizukage and the other swordsmen. The wounded umbu was freed from his agony as a swift strike speared his brain and gave him a merciful death. That little display had not gone unnoticed by the remaining 10 fighters in the arena, all of whom warily stared at the last umbu in the arena. Hope you last longer than your friend there, mocked a hunter ninja. Umbu are pretty pathetic if that's the standards you hold yourself up to these days, mocked one of the two jounin who had killed the other umbu. The remaining 7 jounin nodded to their other competitors as they all ganged up and surrounded the lone umbu from all sides. They all had to jump back when the lone umbu picked up his fallen brother's sword and threw a kunai 5 feet ahead of him. "HN, ready to die," snarled one of the jounin, earning a hidden smile from the blonde umbu. "We'll see," he replied. The Mizukage had only a moment before all the ninjas charged at the lone umbu at once from all sides. It was then the power roared. The intensity of the killing intent grabbed the instant attention of the remaining great swordsmen completely. They all watched as 2 chunin and 1 jounin collapsed instantly. The rest of the enemies flinched but charged forth regardless. The umbu raised his swords, and Jinjetsu saw a razor-sharp aura cover them completely. Wind chakra. The first to reach the umbu was the hunter ninja, who expertly threw a storm of poison needles at him, all of whom were effectively torn to pieces by one of the umbu's swords. It allowed the remaining jounin to close in and try to skewer him from his sides and rear. Mangetsu Hozuki narrowed his eyes sharply when he saw the umbu rotate his swords sharply in a circular motion. Painful screams erupted in the arena as 3 of the jounin saw their own kunai and tanto being broken in half courtesy of the wind chakra-powered strikes. Their shock was clearly visible as they even failed to see the move before it destroyed their weapons, and it didn't stop there as their palms were torn open. The remaining shinobi instantly jumped away to avoid a similar fate, leaving the 3 stunned men to their fate. The blonde umbu was upon the wounded men instantly, and much to the surprise of the Mizukage and his personal guard, he delivered crushing but non-lethal strikes to his stunned opponents that made them collapse to the ground in a small pool of their own blood. A thick mist enveloped the arena, and the terrifying laugh of the hunter ninja and his remaining accomplices echoed. Water style, water bullets. Lightning style, electromagnetic murder. From the mist, a hail of different jutsus charged towards the Umbu, who was already finished with his own hand seals. Earth style, earth wall. The explosions rocked the arena as chakra fought against chakra, and just when the dust was about to settle, the mist was violently dismissed by roaring wind waves, clearly exposing the now surprised Kiri warriors. They watched their lone opponent step outside from the earthen walls that defended him with his hands clasped together. Now it ends, he proclaimed. Genjutsu and his swordsmen all tensed when the air started to become cold. It was impossible to describe the feeling in words, but if they could, then it was an experience of having every ounce of light getting sucked away. They each felt the feeling of death grow stronger and stronger as the remaining 7 opponents of the Umbu suddenly dropped their weapons and desperately clutched their throats as they fell to their knees. Genjutsu narrowed his eyes sharply when the Umbu clasped his hands firmly. His opponents vomited, but instead of blood, gore, or fluids, they spat up nothing but thick, dark smoke. No, it wasn't smoke. It was ash. The men and women thrashed painfully as more and more ash was spewed from their lips. Zabuza, Kisame, Jinpachi, and Amiri watched in fascination as the lone blonde Umbu calmly stepped in between his thrashing enemies. Yield, he commanded. One of the Jounin glared at him murderously as he picked up his kunai and made a desperate charge towards his bitter enemy. The blonde Umbu closed his eyes in resignation before clenching his fist shut. Genjutsu watched in fascination and horror as the charging Jounin screamed in pain when his skin itself was set on fire. The poor man couldn't stop even as his entire body was set aflame, and 3 seconds later he exploded in a shower of guts and blood raining down upon his struggling comrades. All the while the lone Umbu stood detached and untouched. Yield. Mangetsu and Haku felt their skin tremble on hearing that deep voice full of killing intent. Those cold blue eyes were devoid of any mercy, the stare of death itself demanding the creatures before it to make their choice. And they made it. Genjutsu breathed a sigh of relief when one by one the remaining survivors barely nodded their heads in resignation. The Umbu gave a single nod of acknowledgement before unclenching his fist, much to the relief of his enemies, as they stopped coughing and mercifully drifted off to unconsciousness. The medics and emergency support staff rushed into the arena, immediately taking steps to stabilize the wounded and seal away the dead. It was over. Genjutsu watched the Umbu stand alone in the arena, watching the chaos around him with cold and detached eyes. It was the look of a man who had not just seen death, but became death itself. The Mizukage watched the victorious Umbu slowly walk towards the spot where he had made the defiant Jounin explode. The floor was covered in steaming blood and flesh as the Umbu knelt and picked up the traditional dog tag worn by many Kiri shinobi. While these tags didn't have names or crucial details, they did have the nickname their respective shinobi liked inscribed on them. Genjutsu was surprised when the Umbu offered a silent prayer to the tag of the deceased man whose life he had taken before respectfully handing it over to the medics. The same man then glanced at Genjutsu, and the Mizukage flinched when he saw disappointment in those blue eyes. Damn you for forcing me into this position. Even if no words were spoken, the message in those furious blue eyes did reach the Mizukage, who felt guilty once again. Genjutsu could do nothing even as the Umbu turned around and walked out of the arena. The remaining swordsmen were quick to point out and start arguing as to how that man had just insulted the Mizukage and all of them by not even staying back to address them and claim his victory. But Genjutsu was silent. Another faceless masked Umbu stepped beside the Mizukage, making the Kiri leader stare at him. The new arrival had also stopped the argument among the remaining swordsmen. This is on me, Lord Second. It was I who forced that man to participate in this death match. For long, the Umbu have felt ignored by the leadership. Even the village gives more respect and importance to the hunter corps while never acknowledging the sacrifice of those who die in the shadows. We felt that with one of our own joining the great swordsmen would help sway the village's opinion. It might even influence a few strong fighters to join our ranks, which have been thinned quite a lot in this war. In doing so, I forced a few of my men to participate, including him, while never caring about how they felt, which lead to this. I am truly sorry and willing to accept the consequences of my actions, confessed the Umbu commander. Jinjetsu felt as if someone had slapped him very brutally. He glanced at the carnage in the battle arena. He remembered those cold blue eyes full of disappointment. He remembered the Umbu commander's confession, and it made him hate himself. For he had done the exact same thing. He had forced his 7 great swordsmen and a sizable force of skilled ninjas to start a war with IWA. Jinjetsu's reason for this action had been driven by his petty grudge against the second Tsuchikage, which he had carefully hidden behind the motive of a great conquest of IWA that would bring Kiri to a new era of glory. His village and people had accepted his decision, for they believe in him fully. And because of that decision, so many of his people had died. Jinjetsu clenched his fists in fury and shame as he realized he had failed as a Kage. Since he had forgotten to think about the well-being of his people, he had failed to consider the feelings of his own men, who were all forced to fight a pointless battle that led to their deaths because of his orders. Just as the Umbu commander had done the same with his subordinates. What kind of an example had he set for his people? The Umbu commander saw a new fire being born in his Kage's eyes as the man turned towards him. Tell me everything about that boy. He hopped through the deserted rooftops of the village at a rapid pace. The cold air continued hitting him just as the pale moon graced the land with its light. It was almost midnight and most of the village was asleep, with thick mist shrouding most of the districts. In this loneliness, nobody would ever witness an Umbu, nor would they see his nightmares coming to haunt him from the afterlife. He stared at his trembling hands, and just for a moment they were again stained with blood. Pain, sadness, and fear had been clearly visible in the eyes of the Jounin he had killed merely half an hour ago. Those purple eyes, so full of pain, had brought back miserable memories of his past. Why? He fought back that haunting voice and closed his eyes. A darkness followed him, threatening to swallow him completely, but he ran from it. Not tonight, he said to himself. Thankfully, he saw the first visage of his cozy apartment up ahead, which brought his trembling heart some much-needed relief. He ran from the darkness, faster than before, as if his life depended on it. Soon enough, he reached the doorstep and forced himself to regain his composure. As if a switch had been turned, his haunted gaze turned into one of calmness, and his trembling hands stilled completely. He bit his thumb and applied a small portion of his blood on the door, activating an array of seals that glowed faintly before the door opened up slowly, allowing him entry. It was dark when he stepped inside, and yet he was not alone. The lights in the kitchen were burning, and soon enough a woman stepped outside. Even in the darkness, her long blonde hair shined brighter than the sun itself. Her fair white skin reflected more of her beauty under the moonlight, and her pale blue eyes that were so much like his own looked at him. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice barely audible despite the silence of the night. He walked inside and reached the dining table, where he placed his faceless Umbu mask. It felt like a layer had been torn off, and he could breathe again as he felt a hand being placed on his shoulder. "It's done, isn't it?" she asked knowingly. He nodded. She didn't say anything and instead helped him get seated. Then she went back into the kitchen and returned moments later with a steaming bowl of miso ramen. He looked at her, and she gave him a small smile which was sad and encouraging at the same time. "Thank you," he said gratefully, reaching out for her hand, which she gave him gladly. Her skin was warm and soft, unlike his own, which was scarred. He looked at her, still unable to believe someone who was not his family, nor his countrymen, could understand him so much. It was a credit to her skills as a kuniochi and as a person, which only made her more dangerous. She knew she had his trust and could use it to destroy him, but she never did. Maybe it was because she knew he expected her to betray him, considering where their loyalties lied, or maybe a part of her had came to care for him after nearly 5 years of pretending to be his lawful wife. Just like a part of his heart had come to care for her as his wife and his friend. "Do you think he'll ask you to join?" she asked hesitantly, her beautiful blue eyes marred between worry and curiosity. "I think he will," he confessed, remembering the way the Mizukage had looked at him. The higher-ups will be pleased. They have been pushing you for this for so long, she congratulated him, earning a faint smile from him. They are always pushing us both, Ino, he retorted playfully, earning a wry smile from her. Look at it this way, Naruto. You'll be more closer to the Mizukage, more closer to what we have been working for since the past 5 years. In the Umbu, you had to watch every step of yours, but now you may finally get some respite, she suggested hopefully. Nothing is ever easy, Ino. I have never felt that your job in the Hunter Corps has ever been easy, nor will I be safe as one of the 7. We will have to be even more careful now, he warned, which made her reluctantly nod. He decided to silence his troubled thoughts for a while and allowed himself to be regaled in the fascinating smell of his favorite food. His eyes were closed, and yet he felt Ino smile, noting he was pleased with her effort. He hoped he could do the same for her someday. She stepped behind him and gently laid her soft hands on his shoulders. He felt calm, soothing chakra invade his body, washing away the pain in his tense muscles as he ate the first morsel of ramen, which brought a pleased smile on his face. He was content as he gulped down the ramen, and as his muscles relaxed under her touch. She leaned down and placed her cheek against his own, slowly pulling down his face mask even further than his chin. He looked at her once and leaned in to press his lips against hers. It was a gentle gesture reciprocated by her as they both allowed their burdens to wash away. She fought for her home just like he fought for his own, even if it had been years since they had last seen their own motherlands. Their bliss was broken by rough knocking on their door and a strong male voice calling his name. He knew whom it belonged to, and if he was here, then it only meant one thing. She looked into his eyes and gave him a nod. It is time. Genjutsu and the remaining 6 great swordsmen had gathered in the Mizukage's office. In front of them was the Umbu commander who had just finished submitting every file they had on the mysterious Umbu, who won the bloody battle to become the 7th swordsman. We call him the Young Wolf, an apt code name given by the previous Umbu commander for him, as he was one of the youngest boys to join our ranks. He has never lost any battle nor failed any mission assigned to him, no matter how tough or painful, explained the Umbu leader, pride clearly audible in his voice. He's just a boy, commented Genjutsu, surprised by the boy's young age despite what his records said. He's an orphan, my lord. He used to sneak into the academy and attended classes for a year in order to become a shinobi. He was good enough not to get noticed until one of our retired Umbu entered the academy for teaching and caught him. He saw the boy's potential and gave him to the Black Ops. We made him one of us after seeing his potential, and he has never disappointed since, explained the Umbu commander. These records say his birthplace is Nachi village near the eastern coast, a small fishing colony. What about his parents? Asked Mangesta seriously. We did investigate, but found no concrete records, Lord Mangetsu. However, the village was full of orphan children from the last war. Kiri had just been established and records were not being maintained properly until your father established a proper system. But I assure you, he is one of our finest and a loyal soldier of Kiri, promised the Umbu commander fiercely. Huh? Naruto, what a strange name. No surname? Asked Kisame curiously as he read through the records. Unfortunately not. He's already married, and that too to a pretty blonde hunter. A shame for you. Haku, sneered Aim Yuri, earning a cold look from the former hunter ninja, now turned swordswoman. Haku ignored Aim Yuri's remarks and instead turned her attention towards the Mizukage and his son. Even Zabuza watched her closely. The girl he is married to is called Ino, a successful hunter ninja whom I know in passing if not as a friend, vouched Haku. Boy's got quite a body count on his hands for someone so young. 234 confirmed kills is not a bad start, grinned Zabuza. While everyone was busy familiarizing themselves with Naruto's accomplishments and history, Genjutsu's eyes had caught something which the Umbu commander didn't want them to see. The Mizukage looked at the man seriously then. If he is such a fine officer, then I would surely have heard about him until now. Why have I not heard about such a splendid shinobi? Questioned Genjutsu seriously, and was sure the Umbu commander flinched. Naruto is a bit strange, my lord. From what I have seen, he only has a handful friends and lives peacefully with his wife. He is loved by his juniors and respected by his peers and leaders, but he hates spotlight so much that he insists on keeping his mission records secret even amongst Umbu. He was one of the candidates I was hoping would succeed me in the future, but I think he somehow detests leadership, explained the Umbu commander tiredly. What about this mission? The records say he disobeyed orders and went back behind enemy lines despite orders commanding him to retreat back to Kiri, demanded Jinjetsu. He could not afford to have any loose cannons in his ranks, and this evidence was not painting a good picture. To his surprise, the Umbu commander didn't flinch or cower in the face of that accusation. Instead, the man actually straightened up with pride visible in his fierce gaze. We had sent 2 squads to assassinate an important political figure in the Land of Fire. The mission was a success, and Naruto managed to evacuate his squad successfully. However, the other squad was ambushed by Konoha Umbu. Some were killed while the rest were taken prisoner. When he learned of this, Naruto disobeyed command and went back for the Umbu who were captured. Only 2 were alive by the time he found them. He killed the Konoha Umbu and erased all evidence of Kiri's involvement in this entire incident, reported the Umbu leader. And the 2 Umbu that were still alive? Questioned Mangetsu with his narrowed eyes. They were not in any condition to be evacuated, so he gave them a merciful end and brought their bones back to be returned to their families. He is stubborn, I accept that, but he is also one of the finest warriors that the Umbu Black Ops can offer for Kiri. A man of honor and courage. One who actually cares about his comrades and nation, which is more than what we can say for quite a few of our shinobi, answered the Umbu commander, his stern gaze landing on a few of the swordsmen for just a moment. Jinjetsu closed his eyes for a few moments as he pondered over all the information provided to him about the boy so far. A borderline S-rank ninja with a large history of successful A to even 1 S-rank mission in his career. He was strong if the battle was any proof and was actually loved by his comrades. Even the Umbu who died in battle had given Naruto a respectful salute before the young captain gave him a merciful death. He could do with much worse, and yet Jinjetsu wanted to see the boy for himself. Bring him in, he commanded. The Umbu commander nodded and disappeared quickly in order to carry out his orders. Jinjetsu soon after dismissed his remaining swordsmen save for his only son, who took up seat at the window observing their beloved village currently protected in thick mist. What do you think, Mangetsu? Questioned the father as he stared at his son. He's the best choice we have for now, but there is something about him that does not sit well with me. I cannot pinpoint what this feeling is, but when I watched him fight, there was something I saw, whispered Mangetsu curiously. What did you see? Questioned Jinjetsu, keenly aware that his son had sharp instincts and was a good judge of someone's character. I saw pain and hatred in those eyes, but most of all I saw guilt, revealed Mangetsu with a faraway look in his eyes. It is natural, my son. We made him kill his comrades, rebuffed Jinjetsu, but his son shook his head. I don't know why, but I think he has been through something like this before, maybe much worse. The hateful look he gave you before leaving you was not just for you, but also for himself, explained Mangetsu. Jinjetsu was about to reply when his son simply smiled and cut him off. Or maybe I'm just seeing things that don't exist. I could be wrong, father. You have tested his worth as a shinobi. Now test him as a person worthy of leading Kiri and its people. I know you can do it, whispered Mangetsu with a smile. Mangetsu too disappeared away from the room, leaving his father to ponder over his words. It was a well-known fact that Mangetsu had very sharp instincts, even better than Jinjetsu's very own. Maybe his son was right, and he needed to evaluate the boy for himself. Jinjetsu made up his mind and waited. He knocked at the door first, and when the permission was given, he stepped inside. Most people would have felt honored or nervous when their Kage called them for a personal meeting. He was at peace, and it reflected on his masked face as Jinjetsu observed him carefully. Remove that face mask. He obeyed without hesitation, revealing his pale and clean-shaven face to the Kage. You disrespected me, accused Jinjetsu, his sharp eyes glaring at him, but was surprised when the Umbu never flinched. Your actions didn't warrant respect, answered Naruto flatly, earning an Itwitch from Jinjetsu, but a tiny smirk came on the Kage's lips. They told me you were blunt. Now I know why, mused Jinjetsu, as he gestured for him to have a seat. The Mizukage didn't miss the boy, giving him a thankful nod before moving forward to take a seat in front of him. He was young and handsome, but his stone-cold eyes were full of the hardships he had endured all his life. I have gone through your career, and it is impressive to say the least. Kirigakure needs sons like you to help us win this war, stated Jinjetsu honestly. I am at my nation's service, but the way you are now and the decisions you have made, you are not worthy of my loyalty. Jinjetsu blinked in shock. Never in his entire life had he met a fellow shinobi who didn't fear or respect him. Many even loved him, but this green boy had the balls to say something like that to his face. I can have you executed for that offense, warned Jinjetsu, some of his killing intent spiking, which only made the boy smile. You can, but it will only prove my point. A Mizukage who has to threaten his subordinates with death to make them obey him is no true Kage, answered Naruto without any fear and stared right into the shocked man's eyes. What have I done to earn such scorn? Asked Jinjetsu, now truly bewildered and less angry with this boy. You failed your people. You started a war with IWA when there was slim to no chance of victory, and it got your men killed miserably. You allowed a senseless slaughter of dozens more of your men, just so one of them could become the seventh swordsman. You can say it was tradition, and many were expecting for you to uphold them, but when I looked in your eyes I saw that you knew it was a senseless tradition, yet you did it anyway. You are afraid, and because of that weakness, men died. My men, said Naruto furiously. His voice was still calm as he pushed a picture of a 14-year-old boy towards the Mizukage. Do you know who he is? Demanded the Umbu captain. To his shame, Jinjetsu didn't know the shinobi even if he was dressed in Kiri uniform. My subordinate. A boy whom I recruited into Umbu, for he had great potential, a boy forced to fight in your senseless competition. I had to put him out of his misery, watching all his hopes and dreams fade when my sword delivered the mercy killing. He died because you were weak. He died because you didn't have the spine to shut down all the morons asking for this massacre when we need every able-bodied shinobi on the front lines. You demand respect, but you deserve none, snarled Naruto. Jinjetsu felt truly saddened when he saw the smiling parents of the boy posing with him in the photograph. From the looks of it, he was their only child. He remembered Naruto putting down that Umbu when he was mortally wounded and beyond any saving. What would you do if you were in my position? Asked Jinjetsu with a defeated sigh. No matter how much it hurt, he knew Naruto was right, because deep down Jinjetsu had known all this, but sanctioned all those decisions regardless. I would do what is right for our people, no matter how difficult or painful. You are not here to keep people happy. You are here to keep them safe and make them prosper. Command me to lay down my life for Kiri, and I will do so in a heartbeat, but I will not let the lives of my men be destroyed for such nonsense, answered Naruto honestly. You have a stronger will than mine, son, complimented Jinjetsu. The second Mizukage got up from his chair and stepped towards the window, observing the village for a very long moment. He was soon joined by Naruto, as both men stared at the village which was currently at peace. I understand you're angry with me. Disappointed even. However, Kiri is full of people that are fanatic about traditions observed since decades. Even my power as Mizukage is limited in those matters, confessed Jinjetsu, and raised a hand to silence the boy when he was about to protest again. Naruto pursed his lips and watched as the older man clenched his fist. It was then that the young Umbu felt a fraction of the Mizukage's power, and it was intimidating to say the least. But you're right. I must do what is right for my people even if it means taking decisions that are not acceptable to them. I shall strive to achieve that goal, promised Jinjetsu sincerely, offering his hand towards the young boy. He frowned when instead of shaking his hand, Naruto took a few steps back and unsheathed his sword. Jinjetsu tensed but made no move and went on to smile when the boy knelt before him and pledged him his sword. Then, I, Captain Naruto of the Umbu Black Ops, hereby promise my life in the service of this great nation and its Mizukage. I swear on my honor and life to protect these lands, its people, and its beauty with everything in my power, including my life. From this day forth, I shall live, fight, and die as the seventh swordsman of Mist. Jinjetsu looked into those eyes full of determination and loyalty. The Mizukage had not failed to even miss the small alteration in the boy's vow. He had pledged to fight and die for Kiri, to serve its Mizukage, but not Jinjetsu personally. A few men would have been furious at such an insult, but Jinjetsu was only even more impressed by the boy. He was a true soldier of Kiri, a shinobi willing to put nation first before any person. He was courageous if the blunt way in which he had confronted and made Jinjetsu realize his mistakes. A man of honor and courage. Strangely, it warmed Jinjetsu's heart to find such a soul after a very long time. It was Naruto's turn to be shocked when the second Mizukage knelt as well and placed a hand on his shoulder with a smile on his pale face. "Thank you, son. I, Jinjetsu Hozuki, Lord Second, swear to never misuse your loyalty," promised Jinjetsu with a kind smile. There was a flicker. It barely lasted a moment, but Jinjetsu didn't miss it, and it confirmed a few suspicions his son had about Naruto. Just for a moment, he had seen sadness and guilt pass through the boy's eyes before that stone-cold look appeared in a flash. "I wish a few people could have seen this day," whispered Naruto regretfully. Jinjetsu instantly regretted doubting the boy for even a second. He had to remind himself that Mangesta had advised him to give this boy a chance. "Your records didn't say much," said Jinjetsu carefully, but not unkindly. "I kept it that way and would like it to remain so." "Too many bad memories," confessed Naruto, earning a nod from the Mizukage. "I understand. The only thing a man can do is move forward no matter how painful the past is," admitted Jinjetsu, as he helped the boy rise back on his feet. He was surprised to see Naruto was composed and in control of his emotions, but Jinjetsu reminded himself that this boy had served in the Black Ops his entire life. Controlling his emotions was an essential part of the job. In that aspect, Naruto was half at best, but Jinjetsu didn't mind and in fact welcomed the boy's honesty. It kind of reminded him of what his younger son would have been like. Jinjetsu suppressed a painful scream that emerged from his memories. If he closed his eyes, he could still see the woman he loved turn to dust before his very eyes along with their unborn son in her belly. He would never, ever, forgive the bastard who took away the woman he loved. If it meant burning the entire world in his fury. Dismissing those dark thoughts, Jinjetsu gestured his newest swordsman to follow him and was pleased to see Naruto obey without question. They both walked lower and lower into the Kage Tower until they reached the basement. The guards instantly bowed on seeing the Mizukage in their presence, earning a nod from their leader. "Where are we going?" questioned Naruto, unable to conceal the curiosity in his voice. "Getting you started," answered Jinjetsu with a smirk. After a pause, Jinjetsu decided to ask a question that had been plaguing his heart ever since he had seen the boy fight in the arena. "That jutsu you used in the arena, is it in Kekai Genkai?" asked Jinjetsu curiously. Naruto continued walking alongside the Mizukage as they passed through a dark corridor. He dared not close his eyes or risk having the screams ringing in his ears turn into real faces. Faces that he wanted to forget more than anything else, most important of them being those haunting purple eyes. Why? He could hear that painful question lingering in his ears, threatening to consume his heart in grief and agony. "I can't say for certain, but it is a jutsu only I can use. A few have tried to copy the same, and it didn't end well for them," answered Naruto calmly, making Jinjetsu wince as he could already imagine only charred corpses would remain of those fools who had tried to master that dangerous jutsu. "Would like to explain how that power works?" questioned Jinjetsu, earning a tiny smirk from the Umbu. "I'll leave notes behind once I'm dead. Not before that. I hope you understand," said Naruto, amusement ever present in his voice. Jinjetsu laughed at that statement, but did understand and accept the boy's wish to keep his secrets to his own. It was another trait that he had seen previously among many Umbu. The Mizukage saw that they had almost arrived at the destination, and the remaining swordsmen were already waiting for them both. Seeing that, Naruto instantly uplifted his face mask. Even his previously friendly aura turned icy, and Jinjetsu felt the boy was ready to strike if the situation forced him to. Nobody said a word when Jinjetsu and his newest swordsman marched forward towards a lone dais where a bald man was waiting for them with a gleeful smile that was borderline disturbing. There was a neatly crafted box on the table, and Naruto had to force his heart to remain still as he instantly sensed the energy within calling out to him. Jinjetsu must have felt it too, as the Mizukage gave him a nod to step forward. Naruto nodded and walked forward until he was face to face before the bald man. He was shorter than him and in his 50s. His eyes were mismatched in color, which only served to make the Umbu before him more wary. The old man smiled at him and took a step forward to put his cold hand on Naruto's arm. The same man then glanced into Naruto's eyes. "I sense a lot of pain in you, more than most people I have ever met. It shrouds your heart like a raging storm, never to rest. It clings to your skin like ash," whispered the old man. "You know nothing," refuted Naruto, and fought back a wince when the old man grabbed his hand more firmly. "Lie to me if you desire, but don't ever hide your true self from this, or it shall destroy you," warned the old man. Before Naruto could ask or say anything, the old man had already left him and now hobbled towards the box. Nearly all the other great swordsmen gasped when the old man removed a finely crafted longsword from the box. It was still sheathed in its scabbard, but already they all felt its lingering power hidden inside. The old man hobbled towards Naruto and respectfully offered the weapon to him with a slight bow. The Umbu captain hesitated a moment before he steeled himself. With shaky hands, he accepted the weapon and slowly started to pull it out from the scabbard. His eyes drifted towards the Mizukage, who nodded at him with a smile, and Naruto couldn't help but feel grateful to the man as the hilt of the sword bore a roaring wolf as its sigil, a tribute to his Umbu codename. Apprehension and excitement bubbled in Naruto's heart as he fully removed the sword for all to see. The very first thing he noticed was that the weapon was as light as a feather in his hand, despite its length being almost half of that of his own height, and he was by no means short in stature. Next, he noticed the intricate seals carved upon the painfully blinding metal that seemed to glow even more in the darkness. Bravely, he practiced a few swings and was pleased to note it was very easy to move and had a good reach. But apart from that, it was just an ordinary sword and nothing like the other famed weapons currently in the possession of his fellow swordsmen. A part of him felt disappointed, but he didn't let it be seen in his eyes. The old man again hobbled towards him until he was standing right beside Naruto. The Umbu officer looked at him and saw a knowing look present in that veteran gaze. "If you conceal your true self from the blade, then it shall do the same with you. This weapon is now a part of you, and for that to work properly, you both need to be one with each other. Free yourself," advised the old man sternly. "I am free," refuted Naruto stubbornly, not able to understand what was going on here. "You are hiding your true self. Once you step outside of those barriers, you will truly see this sword," said the old man honestly. "What's its name?" asked Naruto with a sigh, knowing every sword wielded by the 7 great swordsmen of the mist always had a name. This one was the newest to be added in the annals of history, so surely it would have a name as well. The old man gave him such a wicked smile that Naruto's heart stopped for a moment. He bit his lip in frustration on seeing the other swordsmen were not impressed with this delay. Even the Mizukage and his son were expecting something better than the spectacle currently unfolding. At this rate, he gave out a weary sigh before he decided to follow through on the advice given to him. It was not something he would ever do with a person, but a sword would never betray his secrets. One by one, he allowed the numerous barriers expertly built in his mind and heart to unravel and flinched when a new power surged through his entire body. No words could describe the feeling of this power that was now flooding each and every cell of his body. It was consuming him. It saw what he saw. It felt what he felt. It thought what he thought until he couldn't decipher his own thoughts from those of this strange power. He knew his eyes had already closed, and yet he could still see the basement they were in. He watched the astonishment etched clearly across each and every person's face, including the Mizukage. They all were staring at him in a different light, and he didn't know why. Curious, he glanced at the light sword in his hand and was astonished to see it had turned pitch black. Its once shining metal had turned so dark that no light could ever pierce through it. A similar darkness was swirling all around him, seeping into him, and he saw his 2 blue eyes shining menacingly in the darkness. The old weaponsmith was now glancing in his terrifying eyes with a knowing smile stretching across his lips. "What's your name?" he asked. His grip on the sword tightened, releasing an even more greater amount of energy in the air, nearly choking everything and everyone else. Strangely, that made him smile wickedly as he whispered his name. Muramasa. Ino couldn't help but smile as she watched the Mizukage dressed in his traditional uniform step forward towards a young man with hair as bright as the sun. For once, Kiri was not shrouded in mist or fog, but the sunlight now graced the mysterious land, bringing with it hopes for a new future. She could hear the cries of the entire village that had gathered around the Kage Tower. History was being written right in front of her eyes, one for which she and her husband had fought so long for. Already the other great swordsmen had been given their honors, and now it was time for the newest and last member of their group to receive his own. She was quite surprised when the Mizukage presented a stark white-colored Haori to Naruto. The former Umbu officer was still wearing his face mask, but his eyes betrayed his own curiosity at the gift. His new greatsword rested inside the scabbard hanging from his hip, whereas a smaller tanto-like version of the same blade rested perfectly on Naruto's back. Originally, Muramasa was supposed to be twin greatswords, but the blacksmiths had recommended against it. Many believed that the blacksmiths wanted that greatsword to be unique and not be compared against another weapon of the same make. On the other hand, they couldn't directly disobey their Kage's wishes, so instead, they compromised by developing a shorter tanto-like version of Muramasa, made from the same metal and mysterious jutsu that made these blades so powerful. In a way that worked out better for Naruto, as he now had one greatsword to wield in open combat, and another shorter weapon of the same caliber to help him in close-quarter combat in tight spaces. She was brought out of her thoughts as her husband started to look at the gift given to him by their supreme leader. Unlike in the past where he was always dressed in Umbu gear, this time the blonde officer had finally changed his appearance as an acceptance of his new way of life and responsibilities. He was wearing a plain full-sleeved black shirt covered by blue pants and a pair of combat boots. On top of them, he was wearing a gray-colored flak jacket commonly worn by almost every Kiri shinobi. On his forehead was a similar gray-colored headband that proudly displayed their village's symbol. The only difference between him and one of the thousands of shinobi currently standing in the streets watching the ceremony was his face mask and combat boots. But it all changed when Naruto allowed the Haori to fall to its full length before passing his right arm through the shoulder opening. Many in the crowd gasped in surprise and curiosity when they saw two distinct things on the Haori's back. The first part was the coloring at the lower edge of the Haori being filled with the same color as the flag of the Umbu Black Ops. To top it off, even a minor symbol of the Special Ops unit was engraved among those colors, a special tribute from the Mizukage towards the unit who had always protected the village from the shadows. Ino didn't miss the subtle change in the body language of the Umbu squads guarding the ceremony from various rooftops. For just a moment, their shoulders swelled with pride before they went back into the shadows to carry out their duty as they always had. Ino couldn't help but acknowledge Jinjetsu Hozuki's smart decision. With such a subtle gesture, he had managed to reaffirm the complete loyalty of the Umbu Black Ops to himself. A powerful gust of wind blew across the village, making her raise a hand to shield her eyes, and it was then that she noticed the other noticeable thing on the back of the Haori, now fully worn by her husband. The seventh. Those words were clearly engraved in dark red kanji, visible for even the weakest civilians to see. The village erupted with cheers never before seen with any of the other swordsmen when they had received their own gifts. Ino couldn't help but smirk when she saw her husband give a subtle bow towards the people, which brought about another wave of cheers. He was already a hero in many eyes and young hearts, but she also saw quite a few who glared. They were easy to spot since they proudly flaunted their family lineage in their attire and by their appearance. The Kagaya and Hagoromo clans. They were the two founding clans behind Kiri and were almost feared and respected in the same manner as the Uchiha and Senju were in Konoha. Even the Mizukage couldn't ignore their opinions, and Jinjetsu had clearly despised them by filling the ranks of the great swordsmen with so many commoners. Only Mangetsu, Haku and Kisame were affiliated to the dozens of prominent ninja clans that played an important part in Kiri's rule. The remaining four, including Ino's husband who was the last and newest member, were just commoners who had rose through the ranks on their own merit. Even so, many ninja clans saw this move by the Mizukage as an attempt to discredit their importance. What the fools didn't understand that while the great clans did make up almost 50% of Kiri's forces, the other half was made up of ninjas from common families, including civilians. Most of all, in broader comparison, the ninja population made up of only 40% of the entire population of the Land of Water. It was vital for Genjutsu to reaffirm the faith of both sides in himself after quite a few previous failures made by him. Naruto, with his striking new uniform and spiky blonde hair with two large bangs covering his face, was the perfect picture of a commoner rising to one of the highest positions in the village. An example that hard work, skill, and dedication to one's village eventually led to such honor. If only these simple people knew the games being played by their leadership, or if they knew what she knew about their newest hero. Ino was standing in the balcony of their apartment, her amused eyes curiously watching her husband who was trying to make his way inside their society compound, but was currently stalled by a few young genin. Unlike the other swordsmen, Naruto didn't brush the young generation off with a menacing glare even if they were being impolite. Only Mangetsu and Haku were similar to him in that way and always tried to address the queries of their fellow comrades as they did today at the ceremony. The other swordsmen clearly didn't like it, and Ino knew that in their heads they believed that such actions would erode some of the fear the world, including Kiri's own people, had of the seven great swordsmen if anybody from their village could just approach them randomly for anything. So far, such differing ideologies had not led to any conflict within the group, but they were a dangerous bunch of men and women with ambitions of their own. I hope you know what you are doing, Naruto. He's a good at this. Ino didn't blink when another man dressed in Umbu uniform appeared beside her. She had felt his presence approaching, a courtesy which he never bestowed upon most people. Hello, Sakumo. She heard the white-haired man sigh at her use of his real name, but chose to let it go and instead laid against the wall. Ino erected a powerful Genjutsu and activated the army of sealing jutsu that Naruto had created around their apartment that effectively prevented anyone from seeing or listening under any circumstances, something which didn't go unnoticed by Sakumo, who was still not used to the level of secrecy maintained by the couple. Knowing they were secure, the white fang of the leaf removed his umbu mask and wearily sat at the chair of the dining table while Ino took up an adjacent seat beside him. The higher-ups are pleased with your progress and have assigned new directives, he began, as a scroll was passed down to her. Ino bit her own thumb and smeared her blood on the scroll, allowing it to open. It took her a few seconds to read their new orders, leaving her completely speechless, making her stare at Sakumo in disbelief. You can't be serious, she whispered, a hint of anxiety visible in her eyes. Unfortunately, I am. We are losing badly on all fronts. Lord Tobirama is dead, and Lord Hiruzen is young and yet to adjust to his position as Hokage. We are fighting a three-way war against Kumo, Iwa, and Suna. 30% of our forces have been killed in action, and another 15% have been left in various states of injuries. The only reason we are still in the fight despite such losses is because of the might of the Uchiha and Senju clans. The Uchiha are engaged in a bitter war with Iwa, and Suna with many clans like the Inuzuka, Sarutobi, Aburame, and Yamanka clans supporting them with other shinobi and men from the daimyo. While the Senju clan is trying its best to hold off Kumogakure's might with the help of the Hitaki, Nara, Hyuga, Akimichi, and Shimura clan. Even as we speak, our people are dying by the hundreds, explained Sakumo bitterly, his own helplessness at being unable to aid their people in such dire times clearly visible on his anguished face. After all, he was the leader of all the operatives of their nation currently active within Kirigakure. What about Yuzushigakure? Asked Ino hesitantly, earning a nod from the older man. They are the only allies we have left and are the only force standing in the way between us and the Kinkaku force, not to forget Kumo's deadly twin Jinchuriki and the Gold and Sliver brothers, said Sakumo worriedly. Ino bit her lip in frustration. The Gold and Silver brothers were as much responsible for starting this entire war along with the Third Reikage, whose ambition was to conquer the whole world. Those brothers, along with the now Third Reikage, had ambushed the Kage Peace Summit and brutally assassinated the Second Reikage and his entourage. Kumogakure underwent a coup under a single night, where the elite Kinkaka Black Ops forces murdered any shinobi supporting the peace, not that there were many to begin with. The flames of the First Great Shinobi War were yet to die down, and another war had been started to avenge the grudges of the recent past. The Second Reikage and the Second Hokage were the only Kages insisting on peace, a desire for which they both paid in blood for, as after killing the Second Reikage, the Gold and Silver brothers along with the Kinkaku Black Ops unit ambushed and murdered the fleeing Second Hokage. With Hashirama's death in the First War, and Tobarama's in this war, the pillars holding the Senju clan together had shattered. The Uchiha were undergoing their own turmoil after the loss of Madara and Izuna, and shinobi of the same caliber were yet to emerge again in this dire hour. With two Kages dead, the rest didn't take much time to endorse their own agenda. The Third Reikage started a conflict with the Land of Fire with the help of the Lightning Daimyo, who had his eyes set on the fertile lands of the south. He was joined in by the Land of Earth and the Tsuchikage. Eventually, both of these factions managed to pursue the Land of Wind and the Kazekage to join their crusade with the promise of water, which was desperately needed in the desert nation. All of these harsh facts made one thing absolutely clear for Ino. Her people were dying. "I'll do it," promised Ino, as her fists clenched in fury on imagining all the people back home whom she had once known. Were they even alive, or would they even recognize her when she returned home? If she returned home. Good. You are our highest-ranked operative in the Hunter Corps. Their opinion are greatly taken into account by the Kiri leadership. Pursue your group leader with this intel, and let Naruto take care of the rest. He is the only one who can convince the Mizukage. I heard the man has taken a liking to our boy, said Tsukumo with a smile as he passed her another scroll which she decided to open later. Instead, she looked at Tsukumo, and it was clear for her to see that he was impressed with Naruto's progress. Naruto will follow orders, but I am doubtful if the Mizukage will listen to him. He's still new to the group, warned Ino, only to have a dark but fleeting look cross Tsukumo's face. Once Naruto knows that we plan to involve Kirigakure against Kumo, he will sell his very soul if that's what it takes to get it done, promised Tsukumo without any doubt or hesitation. Why? Asked Ino worriedly. She liked to think that she knew most of the things about her husband, but the way Tsukumo said that implied another darker aspect of Naruto that she didn't know. If he hasn't told you, then it is not my place to disclose his past. But let's just say that Kumogakure and the Kinkaku Black Ops unit are the ones Naruto hates most in this world. They are the reason he accepted this mission with you from his village. Ino, be careful around him. He's a veteran of the First Shinobi World War and the last surviving member of the S program, explained Tsukumo gravely. Ino's face lost all color as the implications of these revelations dawned on her. But the S unit was annihilated in the ending days of the First Great Ninja War. They were the special forces Yuzu had dispatched to rescue Hashirama Senju after he was surrounded deep behind enemy lines in the Land of Lightning. In their attempt to save the first Hokage, they went up against the newly formed Kinkaku Black Ops forces and Kumo's two-tailed beasts. Their intervention helped Hashirama escape, but later on he succumbed to his wounds. But in order for that to happen, the S unit stayed behind as decoys and were eventually annihilated to the last man, recited Ino perfectly. After that event, Tobarama Senju had realized the need for Konoha to have its own Black Ops unit who could perform such dangerous missions. That had laid the foundation for Konoha's own Umbu Black Ops, which was still a young but very quickly growing special forces unit. In order to become a successful operative, each and every history of every village had been ingrained in her mind, including many of the missions which were classified for the common shinobi. But the S unit was killed nearly a decade ago. If Naruto had been one of them, then that would mean. Tsukumo gave her a knowing nod as she stumbled upon the unsaid conclusion. Naruto has seen more war than the both of us combined. He has been at the front lines ever since he was a child, and this is just the tip of the iceberg as to why he hates Kumogakure and the Kinkaku Black Ops. His superiors in Yuzu had warned me that there were much more deeper reasons behind Naruto's hatred. Reasons which are personal to him, and for which Naruto has sought the death of Kumogakure his entire life. Now he has that chance, and trust me, he will make sure they paid in blood for all the pain they caused him, explained Tsukumo seriously. Then our two villages are using his hatred, said Ino sadly. To think her kind and caring friend had such a dark past. Tsukumo gave her a pained smile at her statement as he picked up his umbu mask and got up from his chair. All shinobi are tools, Ino. We are the ones who protect from shadows, to fight and die for one's motherland without receiving anything in return. That is what it means to be a ninja. Naruto knows it, and so do you, whispered Tsukumo as he vanished out of the apartment. Ino stared at the other scroll which she was yet to open, and it filled her with dread. They were playing a dangerous game till this day, and now it was going to get even more deadlier. Out of all the villages, Kirigakure had the worst reputation when it came to treating enemy prisoners. It was better to take your own life than to risk getting exposed to the mist's hospitality, which drove most people mad, or to their gruesome and painful deaths. But they had their orders, and it was just like Tsukumo said. We are the root that protects the tree from the shadows. Ino watched him silently go through their new orders imprinted in the two scrolls before he set them on fire in his own hands and reduced them to ash, which soon disappeared inside his own skin. She was still not used to the sight of him exercising that mysterious power. For years, she had wondered how he had mastered such a power. But now that she knew he had been a part of the infamous S-Unit, a few things started to make sense to her. What do you think? She asked hesitantly, and saw him aimlessly staring at the ceiling of their apartment. I will never forget their pain, he whispered. Naruto. He blinked on hearing her voice and a soft hand landing on his shoulder. Just for a moment, he had seen them all again just before they vanished once again. Kumogakure took everything from me. My family, my friends, my comrades. It's time they feel the same pain, said Naruto bitterly. They are asking you to attack that place. You know that's suicide, she warned him, but he had already made up his mind. I won't be alone. I don't know how, but I will make the Mizukage see reason. And then, I will bring pain to the land of lightning. I don't care how dangerous or suicidal it is, for this is the path I have chosen, he decided. I just don't want you to take unnecessary risks. You fight for your country just like I fight for mine, but don't think your life is worthless. The higher-ups may feel that way towards you, but not me. I care about you as your ally, your friend, and your fake wife, she said with a bittersweet smile, which made him smile as well as he placed a tender kiss on her forehead. Don't worry about me. Once this war is over and our nations are safe once more, we shall return home no matter what, said Naruto with a gentle smile. You promise? She asked, daring him to say otherwise, but he never did. I never go back on my word. You know that, said Naruto shyly, as she hugged him and allowed him to wrap his strong arms around her. You did well today. The people certainly loved their new hero, teased Ino, which earned a half-hearted chuckle from him. If only she could see the way his face fell on remembering all the people he had fooled today. In the ninja world, you either die a hero or live long enough to become the very thing you hated. He could still hear his old man's words ringing in his ears. He could still remember it all. I wonder what you'll think of me now, father? Of what I have become. What you all would think of me now. If he closed his eyes, he could still see the tall and broad-shouldered red-head man with pale skin. Beside him was a striking woman with fair skin and long blonde hair that reached her waist. Her blue eyes were so full of love and warmth as she and the man laid their hands on the shoulders of two young boys in front of them. One was older than the other with beautiful blonde hair and happy blue eyes. He was holding the hand of the tiny younger boy with dark red hair that covered half his face. I will see you one day, once I get justice. It was that promise made years ago that drove him even today. The power of that resolve that made him betray and lie to every person who had believed in him and trusted him. The pain in his heart making him able to bear fooling all the people around him, lying to them all, including the woman in his arms. What about the food situation? Naruto and the other swordsmen listened silently as their Kage and the various clan heads along with high-ranked officers discussed about their nation's future course of action in this war. Having already suffered losses without much gains, the Kiri leadership was determined to make correct decisions going forward. But his focus was only partly on the discussion going on and relied more upon watching quite a few clan heads that shot him hostile or distrustful looks every now and then. The daimyo has agreed to extend his full support in terms of men, supplies, and money provided that we are able to show him considerable gains in return. If not, he has warned that Kiri's leadership will undergo a massive change, announced Jinjetsu. How dare that civilian say such a thing? Fumed Lord Hiro Hagoromo. We are doing all in our power to further Kiri's future. If the civilian thinks he can threaten his betters, then it's time we paid him a short visit, challenged Lady Reika Kagaya, the heavenly beautiful but equally deadly leader of the Kagaya clan. She had long flowing silver hair and equally mesmerizing white pearl-colored eyes. Her skin itself was more brighter than the moon's light, and her chakra was more dark and fierce than most people in the room. When her mischievous eyes landed on Naruto, he felt the hair on the back of his neck rise in alarm. Now that we have such fine new shinobi as our famous swordsmen, I say we put their abilities to good use, she suggested with a smirk, earning swift nods from the clan leader of the Hagoromo. Her smirk vanished when a cold aura descended upon the meeting hall. Its weight was more than that of several mountains combined, and it smelled like the scent of death itself. If she focused hard, she could actually hear painful scream of hundreds moaning around her. Her gaze then connected with the man that had unleashed this power, just like everyone else was now looking at him. If you think it is so easy to raise one's hand against our own countrymen, then perhaps I should extend this courtesy to a select few people first, warned Naruto, his voice as cold as ice. Oh, you've got some balls. And here I thought you were just a pretty face, Reika teased. Naruto placed his hand upon the hilt of his sword and inched it slightly outwards, unleashing an unearthly scream that terrified each and every person in the room. It reached a point where the Mizukage gave him a sharp glare that made him resheath his sword, much to the relief of everyone else. No one is going to raise any weapon against their comrades anymore. Those who do shall be executed right away, thundered Jinjetsu, glaring straight at the Kagaya matriarch. Of course, Lord Second. We only desire to support your rule and avoid any unnecessary meddling from the daimyo, soothed Reika, receiving a suspicious glare from the Kagaya. Naruto didn't miss how tense a few Hozuki clan members were, and the same was the case with a few Kagaya and Hagoromo clansmen in the room. Lord Second, let us discuss how we can make Iwagakure pay for its crimes, suggested Lord Yamato Yuki, the leader of the Yuki clan and the father of Haku, who was now one of the newest members of the 7 great swordsmen. Jinjetsu nodded at the request, looking quite grateful as he gestured to the Umbu commander, who stepped forward while another 2 Umbu lowered the ninja world map in the center of the room for everyone to see. The fact that it was transparent made it possible for each person to see every detail, no matter their position in the room. At the start of this war, Kirigakure had close to 30,000 shinobi and the same number of civilian fighters from the daimyo. Now that count was down to 25,000 shinobi and roughly 20,000 civilian fighters. Jinjetsu had the grace to grimace as he was again reminded of his failed expedition against Iwagakure that costed him not just members of the 7 ninja swordsmen, but nearly 3,000 shinobi dead and another 2,000 in various states of injury. The daimyo had rushed in several regiments of his personal guard when the news reached him, but unfortunately that entire fleet never even reached Iwagakure's shores and was instead wiped out in violent sea storms. And they were not even taking into account the financial and logistical cost of these failures or the effect it had on the morale of their forces. All in all, Kirigakure was in a mess of their own doing, or specifically on account of their Kage's hasty decisions. Jinjetsu listened as quite a few of his officers suggested launching a naval invasion by using their entire fleet of ships. Only this time around civilian fighters would not drown during storms, as they would have shinobi protecting them from the elements. The plan is too risky. Plus, have we even thought about supplying our troops once they land on Iwa's shores? The entire voyage would take 6 weeks at minimum. If our troops are in danger of any kind, it will be too late when help reaches them. Lord Second, the Karatachi clan cannot in good conscience allow our shinobi to die pointless deaths, objected Yagura Karatachi, the new and young leader of the small but dangerous Karatachi clan. Naruto was surprised when the same 14-year-old boy gave him a respectful nod and even a faint smile for earlier standing against the Kagaya leader's dangerous suggestion. I agree with Lord Yagura. We should think of an alternative plan where we have the chance of reaching our troops as quickly as possible under any circumstances, voiced Lord Minace Terumi, the leader of the famed Kekai Jinkai warriors who could manipulate 3 elements to create something more dangerous. The Umbu Black Ops also agree with your decision, my lords. What should we do? Lord Second asked the Umbu commander devotedly, as he stared at their Kage. Naruto tensed when he saw his now masked wife dressed in her hunter ninja outfit make a small cough, drawing the attention of everyone. She received a short nod from her superior and a similar one from Jinjetsu, which made Ino step in the middle of the room near the ninja map. There is another way, she suggested, gauging everyone's reaction. While the Hozuki, Yuki, Karatachi, and Terumi clan heads looked open to suggestion, the Umbu commander and the Kagaya clan leader didn't seem happy for various reasons. One hated the hunter corps, while the other loathed a common-born receiving such a chance to speak amongst their betters. Jinjetsu picked up a report laid on his desk by a hunter ninja even as he saw the other leaders do the same when they were given similar reports of their own. Our intel suggests that an invasion by sea is not possible, neither is one from air given our lack of technological advance in that area. That leaves us with a land invasion, suggested Ino. The only way for such an invasion to happen is for our forces to cut through Kumogakure and reach Iwagakure. However, we neither have a pact granting military access with Kumo, nor are we their allies. This would be an act of war against a very powerful nation. Is this what the Hunter Corps is favoring now? Asked Jinjetsu sharply, looking not at Ino, but her superior, who fidgeted when a small portion of their Kage's killing aura landed on him. Like it or not, but this is the only choice we have, Lord Second. Kumogakure has formed a military alliance with Iwagakure. If we attack the stone again, then we are bound to face Kumo shinobi coming to their aid, in which case the Hunter Corps believes in striking them first and wiping them out before bringing our nation's might upon stone, explained Ino. And how do you plan to make that happen? Questioned Mangetsu calmly. Our shinobi have fared poorly in Kumo's mountainous regions in the last war, protested another minor lord. We don't have any nearby base of operations that could supply our troops when they start invading the entire coastal line of the Land of Lightning. It is not feasible, warned Haku, earning a surprising nod from Amiri Ringo of all people. We'll just have to cut through them, I suppose, said Kisame, earning a dark smirk from Zabuza and a similar grin from Jinpachi Munashi. Jinjetsu had seen and listened to all the arguments only, then his gaze landed upon one of the few who was yet to speak. What do you think, Lord Seventh? Asked Jinjetsu amusedly, enjoying the surprised reaction it gained from Naruto on his new title and earning stern glare in return from the Kagaya leader. Now that he was put into the spotlight, he had no chance but to voice his opinion, which was what he had been patiently waiting for. As he walked towards the map, he gave a hidden smile to his wife, who bowed and allowed him the space, just like they had planned to do. If we are to win this war, we will need allies. Any ally of Iwagakure is our enemy. Am I right, Lord Second? Asked Naruto seriously, earning a firm nod from Jinjetsu. Then that greatly limits our choices, for only 2 notable powers are currently engaged in open conflict with our enemies and their comrades, suggested Naruto. In an instant, Reika Kagaya was on her feet, and the bloodlust in her eyes made Naruto tense. You mean to ally us with Konoha and their lapdogs, the redhead bastards, she yelled furiously. We spit on the tree huggers and their pacifist ways. They deserve to get wiped out and are not even worthy of any aid from us, agreed Lord Hiro Hagoromo. Ino clenched her jaw at that outburst and blatant insult thrown at her people. Her husband, on the other hand, was as calm as still water and looked at both the clan heads before glancing at the Mizukage. Lord Second, the Land of Fire has quite a lot to offer us. They have money, minerals, and rich lands. It is the perfect time to ally with them when they are currently in need of aid. Like it or not, Konoha and Yuzushiogakure are strong enough to face 3 great nations and their supporters on their own. We need allies like them if we are to win this war. I am not asking you to like it, but if it saves the lives of our people, then we should set our pride aside," argued Naruto fiercely. "The wounds of the last war are yet to heal, Naruto. Moreover, our nation does not have a trustworthy reputation in the world. If we approach them for an alliance, we look weak and they gain even the tiniest upper hand in negotiations, which is something that I cannot allow. I understand and even agree with your suggestion that allying with them is in our interest, but I will not let Kiri appear weak," decided Jinjetsu. Naruto was quite impressed again with the Mizukage when he saw how that decision instantly made the hardcore Kagaya and Hagoromo clans back down, while the other more liberal clans pondered over it. "Then what do you suggest we do, Lord Second? All the facts along with their pros and cons are before you. My sword is yours to command," promised Naruto. Jinjetsu got up from his chair, making everyone else follow suit, but the Mizukage didn't say anything as he approached towards Naruto and the map. His veteran gaze stared at it for several long moments before landing on his swordsman. "Let us show the world the power that Kirigakure holds. It shall strike fear in the hearts of our enemies and hope in the minds of potential allies. We shall attack Kumogakure with our entire might and destroy them for allying themselves with Awagakure. If the Land of Fire and its allies see sense, then they can approach us requesting for an alliance, and we may consider," declared Jinjetsu, earning predatory smiles from the Kagaya and Hagoromo leaders, whereas the other lords and commanders bowed their heads in submission. Naruto conceded, knowing that the Mizukage had made up his mind, and trying to make him change his decision in public would only draw unwanted attention upon him. "I have made my decision. Now tell me where we can launch such an attack that will make sure my message is delivered to the world?" asked Jinjetsu seriously, his gaze specifically looking at Naruto. Without hesitation, Naruto placed his finger upon Osaka, which was a rich and important coastal city in the Land of Lightning. More importantly, it was the headquarters of the Kinkaku Black Ops forces and an entire regiment of Special Ops shinobi. Jinjetsu gave a predatory smile as he placed his hand upon Naruto's shoulders. "Show them what it feels to lose what they love." Ino found herself standing in a very dangerous place. Heavy rains were falling down from the skies, drenching the blood-stained ground and the corpses that littered over it. It was a story of devastation and pain. She caught sight of shinobi wearing uniforms of Kumogakure and those from Yuzu lying dead for as far as she could see. Giant craters, scorched earth, destroyed sections of forest, dried-up lakes, and broken weapons greeted her at each turn. In the far-off distance, there were huge towers of fire erupting from all over the earth. It was hell. Yet the battle was not over. It was then she sensed that familiar and terrifying aura once again. Despite her instincts telling her to run away, her legs rushed her towards the direction of that power. Her heart threatened to explode as the presence became even more stronger and the screams of 1,000 souls reached her. Soon enough, she came across a mountainside cliff and took up position at its edge as she caught glimpse of the ongoing battle. Her eyes widened on seeing thousands of shinobi from Kumogakure standing on one side, led by none other than the Gold and Silver Brothers. Joining them in the fight was the elite Kinkaku Black Ops unit. Judging by their sheer numbers, the entire battalion was present and participated in the battle. Her eyes widened in horror as she saw 3 or 4 dozen young teenagers and even children with familiar red hair of the Uzumaki clan lying dead across the battlefield. They were all dressed in umbu gear, and many still had masks on their faces even in death. It was then she caught sight of a lone boy wearing the same uniform and a wolf mask cradling one young umbu with bright red hair in his arms. Judging from the boy's lack of movement and nasty hole in his chest, he was dead. Ino felt something in her chest tighten when she saw the lone boy from Yuzu having blonde hair engulf his younger but dead friend in a bear hug. Tears of blood started to fall from the blonde umbu's eyes, and it gave birth to a feeling so powerful that it reached Ino's own heart. Hate. She rushed downhill, uncaring of the danger she was putting herself in, as that familiar, haunting feeling in her heart grew stronger. However, she was forced to stop when the Yuzu soldier laid down his comrade and lifted his gaze towards the enemy that outnumbered and surrounded him. It was then she saw those red and haunting eyes. Sharingan. No, she thought, for those eyes lacked any tomo or the pattern of the Uchiha clan's famed dojutsu. What made her doubt that conviction was the fact that the chakra she felt from the boy did feel familiar to that of an Uchiha. It could barely be sensed, but that didn't change the fact that it was there. And those eyes. However, there was another presence. One more stronger than the Uchiha chakra that she had felt earlier. It coiled around the boy like a shroud and threatened to burn anyone that got near him. Dark black-colored ash started to leak out of the boy's entire body as the enemy army in front of him charged once again with a thunderous roar. With a deafening and monstrous roar of his own, the last Yuzu shinobi charged forward to meet his foes head-on. She was about to scream at him, to warn him to give up and run away, but was suddenly at a loss of sense as the world around her started to disappear instantly. "You shouldn't be here." That voice was one she knew very well, and when her eyes opened again in a flash, it was then that she saw herself lying in her bedroom on their bed. She looked sideways and saw Naruto staring at her attentively. He did not look pleased. Ino flinched when she saw that they had coiled across each other quite intimately, and one of her arms was wrapped tightly around his chest with her fingers resting over his heart. She realized her mistake. "Never do that again, Ino," he said calmly. But his disappointment and underlying anger was not missed by her as she ducked her head in shame. "It happened by mistake. I am truly sorry for that, and I won't let it happen again," she promised sincerely. He looked at her for a few long moments, gauging the worth of her promise before heaving a tired sigh and placed his hand over his face. "It was my fault as well, I suppose. I underestimated the limits of your mind-walking ability. Next time, I'll take proper measures to make sure this doesn't happen," he said out loud. She could do nothing but nod her consent as she had unknowingly invaded his memories. Since both of them were deep asleep, their senses were extremely dulled, and their close proximity allowed their powers to interact with each other. It wouldn't have been so horrible had they been true husband and wife, but in truth they were operatives serving different nations with secrets of their own. And she had just caught sight of one of his own. Was it true or a dream? "The things that I saw," she whispered. Her fear had not yet subsided, and which was something that he didn't miss. And yet he chose to remain silent, neither confirming or denying her question. Instead, he disentangled himself from her gently and stepped towards the edge of the bed. He helped himself to a bottle of water lying at the table beside his side of the bed, and silence ensued in their room. Once he was done drinking his fill, he looked back towards her and gave her a much-needed reassuring smile. "It's all right," he said. She remained silent, but at peace as he got up from their bed and walked bare-chested towards their wardrobe. A small smile came upon her lips as she thought about how they were strangers to each other in so many ways with their secrets, and yet they both were kind to each other, considerate of how the other felt. She could easily pretend to display such emotions with other people as she was trained to do so, but with Naruto those same feelings came to her naturally. She didn't have to pretend and could be herself with him. Even if there existed a wide chasm between them, they both could understand each other. She cared for him, and in his own way he cared about her too. Or that was what she herself believed, for the other possibility seemed too harsh and cold. She herself got out of their bed, allowing her long and free blonde hair to float in the gentle breeze of the silent night. She was wearing one of his t-shirts and even his shorts, which she liked, and an action that always amused him. Even now he smiled on seeing her smirk. Her gaze caught sight of the clock, and that evaporated all her happy feelings. "You guys are going to do it, aren't you?" she asked in a resigned voice, making him look at her. "The orders have already been delivered by the Mizukage himself. You know I have no choice. Besides, I've wanted to do this for a long time," he confessed, as she stepped closer to him and placed her hand atop his. "Is it because of your past?" she asked. He just nodded, confirming her suspicions, but she chose not to push him on this topic any further if the memory she had unknowingly seen was any proof. "It's true that the Mizukage asked you and the other swordsmen to attack Osaka town by yourself. He wants to reinstate the fear and respect enjoyed by your group across the shinobi world. Yet even so, he had offered all of you the choice of taking Kiri's best fighters in battle with you if required. I knew most of the others from your group had refused the offer for reasons of their own. But why did you even refuse to offer me a chance to fight by your side when I had specifically said that to you earlier? She asked, some anger and frustration seeping into her usually calm voice. She was further agitated when he didn't answer her question and instead went away to take a bath. Yet she didn't let it go and stubbornly waited until he returned. Even so, he was silent despite her attempts to make him answer. He remained silent until the very moment he adjusted the haori given to him by the Mizukage and his sword on his hip. Why Naruto? She asked more insistently. She, along with an entire battalion of hunters, Umbu ninjas and Jounin along with Chunin, were to remain as backup nearby the coastal stronghold and only step in if the 7 great swordsmen were in deep trouble. It frustrated her and now even terrified her as she had seen a glimpse of his history with the Kinkaku unit and Kumogakure in general. I and the others can fight alongside you guys. It will make our attack more fast and effective. Why won't you consider it? If you are the one to vouch for us aiding you in battle, then the Mizukage won't refuse, she pleaded, making him stop when he was just about to reach the door. He looked back at her, and even though his face was hidden behind his mask, she knew he was smiling. You were always the optimist among us both. However, the world needs more people like you, he praised. Why? She asked again, refusing to be blinded by his praise. He blinked, and for a moment he saw them all once again, only for everyone to disappear when he opened his eyes. She didn't miss the way his fist clenched slightly and the way his shoulders slumped a little for a moment before he composed himself and looked back at her. This time he was fully smiling, but she could see the pain in his eyes very clearly. My dream died, but your dream is still alive, Ino. She froze and felt a lump growing in her throat even as tears started to arrive in her eyes as she remembered her village and her own desire to return back there one day. He knew her wish and was doing everything in his power to make sure she lived to see that dream become a reality. I want you to be part of that dream too, she said gently, making him smile wistfully. He placed the Tonto version of his sword on his back and turned back to walk towards her. When he reached in front of her, he lowered his face mask and leaned down to place a gentle kiss across her lips. Ino felt herself melting in his embrace and kissed him back, fiercely wishing he would join her dream, for deep down, he was a good man, no matter how much he pretended to be otherwise. The moment ended too soon for her when he broke the kiss and raised his face mask back in its place. Thank you. With those words, he vanished from their home in a swirl of ashes. Jinjetsu noted the determined expressions in the eyes of his 7 great swordsmen. Armed to the teeth, they were ready to conquer the world with Kiri's colors. A part of him felt extremely proud to see his own son among these great men and women, but there was another who had recently caught the Mizukage's eye, a fine shinobi whom he could trust Kiri's future with. The Mizukage glanced down from his tower to see the 501st Battalion standing ready and awaiting his orders. Made up of Kiri's finest Jounin, Chunin, Umbu, and Hunter Ninja, it was the most elite unit they could field against their enemies. In the upcoming mission, he intended to have them act as support while the 7 ninja swordsmen stormed the front. Now, it was time for him to choose the one to lead this mission. Do any of you have any ideas that you want to suggest? Asked Jinjetsu seriously. None, Lord Second. We will follow orders, replied Haku obediently, earning a nod from Amuri Ringo as well. Unknown to them, their reply had only disappointed their supreme leader, who didn't let his personal feelings be visible. Well, it's about time to get our hands dirty, said Kisame with a shark-like grin. The lightning pups will soon get a taste of my blade, agreed Zabuza. Mine too, whispered Jinpachi menacingly. Jinjetsu closed his eyes and tried to stem his disappointment. It was true that Kiri had many fine shinobi who had excelled truly as individual warriors, but there were very few who had it in them to lead others. People who could look at the bigger picture, care about something other than their own desires. Lord Second, I propose that the 501st fight alongside us. Having them acting as support is good, but their potential will be wasted if we keep them away from such a crucial battle. Besides, even the 7 of us, no matter how strong, shouldn't try to shoulder everything alone. We will strike fear into the hearts of our enemies, but we must not alienate our comrades, explained Mangetsu, drawing hesitant nods from Aim Yuri and Haku. Jinjetsu smiled and was once again filled with pride over his son's thoughtfulness. Yet even so he remained silent. Mangetsu's heart was in the right place, and he had the potential to be a truly great leader of their nation, but he had missed one key factor. Naruto had listened to the suggestion provided by the Kage's son, and it made him remember Ino's own desire to fight alongside him. But it also brought back painful memories, ones that he wished to forget. He had believed in people other than himself once. Could he do so again, knowing what had happened when he had made the same choice in the past? Yet when he thought about the alternative, there was not much choice. The 7 ninja swordsmen were a dangerous force, but not one of them, except for Naruto himself, had faced the Kinkaku and their allies. He alone knew what horrors that unit was capable of. If anyone from their group, or if most of them died, then the 501st would be completely unprepared to face the Kinkaku battalion and an entire regiment of special forces from Kumogakure. He looked at the hundreds of ninjas assembled below the tower. Many of them were so young and didn't deserve to suffer the fate that people whom Naruto himself had once cared about faced. The decision was made. Lord Second, I agree with Mangetsu. Even so, I still propose the 7 of us lead and battle the enemy at first. Our enemy are the Kinkaku and Kumo's finest Black Ops. It is imperative we who are strong battle them first and gather as much information as we can and do maximum damage. By collecting that intel, we can instruct our troops of the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. This way, when they do step into battle, they are fully prepared and suffer minimum casualties, requested Naruto sincerely. Boy, and why the hell should we go to all that effort? They are not kids, but shinobi, barked Aim Yuri in protest. They'll just get in our way even if we do tell them, hissed Zabuza, earning nods from Kisame and Jinpachi. Naruto-san, time is of the essence. We cannot battle the Kinkaku battalion and the entire regiment of Special Ops forces while also taking care of our own comrades. At this rate, our mission may not prove much effective. I suggest we go ahead with Mangetsu's idea. The 501st is made up of our finest shinobi. They will know what to do, suggested Haku. Jinjetsu watched as his son directly looked at Naruto. Are you afraid that we will lose people? But that is a part of being a shinobi, said Mangetsu calmly, but was surprised when Naruto shook his head. I know that. However, we are the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. We are Kiri's sword against its enemies, but we are also its shield. We need as many men as we can in this war. Most of all, we need to rebuild the trust of our troops back into the leadership. If it's too much trouble for you guys to instruct our men, then allow me to do that task, requested Naruto. Before anybody else could speak, Jinjetsu cleared his throat, drawing their attention. I have heard what all of you had to say. Now hear my decision. Naruto blinked when the Mizukage directly looked at him without any doubt or hesitation in his gaze. Naruto, I name you commander of this mission with Mangetsu as your second in command, declared Jinjetsu, much to the surprise of everyone, including Naruto himself, who had never thought the Mizukage would choose him to lead over his own son. By the looks of it, Mangetsu also didn't look very pleased if his clenched fist were any proof. Why not your own son, Lord Second? Asked Aim Yuri with a frown. Our warriors will follow Mangetsu. He is a proven fighter, argued Haku zealously. Not that it matters to us, but why the newbie, Lord Second? Asked Kisame curiously. Even Naruto, who had remained silent, was curious to hear as to what led the older man to make such a decision. Naruto is a proven battle commander. In the Umbu, he has led several missions against Kumogakure shinobi. He knows how they fight and operate. He is a strong warrior, but most of all he understands what it means to lead. A commander is not just responsible for the success of the mission, but is also responsible for the safety of the troops under him. If you directly pit our troops against foes like the Kinkaku and their allies, many will die a needless death when it can be avoided by using Naruto's idea. All of you have your own thinking, but this mission is not just about you. It's about Kirigakure and its future, explained Jinjetsu fiercely as he turned towards the former Umbu officer. I leave them all to you. Naruto knelt fully before the Mizukage before looking at him with nothing but pure determination. I will look after them, Lord Second promised the seventh. Jinjetsu nodded and looked at the others assembled before him. To his great relief, they all bowed their heads to his decision one after another. He doubted they would make Naruto's task easy considering each of them were very powerful and had their own agenda. If this is good for our people, then I shall follow you, Naruto promised Mangetsu reluctantly. Jinjetsu couldn't hide his smile this time as he saw Naruto give a respectful nod to the younger boy. The proud father gave his son an acknowledging nod, earning a thin smile from the boy. Bring glory to our nation. Mangetsu hopped across the forest trees at a rapid pace in order to catch up with the man he was supposed to follow in this mission. Behind him, he saw the remaining members of his group and the entire 501st following dutifully. Most of their warriors were excited for some much-needed action, but Mangetsu was not at peace, for deep down, he felt something was not right. The mission, as simple as it was, had some much hidden aspects to it, ones that were somewhat known to their commander. "What do you know about them?" asked the Hozuki heir as he joined his commander. "What makes you think I know anything about our enemy?" retorted Naruto calmly, earning a narrowed gaze from the purple-eyed boy. "You wouldn't have fought so strongly for your strategy to be accepted unless you knew something that I and the others don't. I don't know much about you, but the Umbu trust you. You have faced the Kinkaku before, haven't you?" asked Mangetsu seriously. He waited for an answer and saw Naruto calmly staring ahead as they both jumped across trees at a pace which was impossible to match for most ninjas. Once he confirmed, "Then it was right of my father to choose you to lead this mission." Naruto couldn't hide his surprise on hearing the younger boy's honest remark. The fact that he was smiling and there was no ill emotion hidden in his heart was a stark contrast to his earlier behavior. Mangetsu must have sensed his thoughts as he shrugged. "I won't lie, I wanted to lead this mission. But if you truly know how to fight our enemy with minimal losses to our own forces, then I will believe in you as my father has. I just don't want more of our people to die in vain," admitted Mangetsu. He didn't miss the fleeting sorrowful look that crossed Naruto's eyes before he schooled his features once more. "What is it?" asked Mangetsu hesitantly. "You just reminded me of someone I once knew." Before Mangetsu could question him any further, they soon cleared the edge of the forest and saw themselves standing in front of the vast sea that separated the land of water from the land of lightning. Their remaining comrades joined them soon enough in a few minutes, and Mangetsu decided to address them when Naruto gave a nod. "In order to reduce time, we will all travel on foot across the sea. Rest up a bit, regain your strength and energy, for once we begin our run there is no stopping or going back," instructed Mangetsu. "Don't you think that it's a bit more dangerous for some of our younger subordinates? It might just kill them before they even see enemy shores," warned Kisame with a smirk, as he looked at a handful Chunin who grimaced. "There is no other choice. With our old fleet destroyed and a new one in the process of being built, we have no choice but to cross the ocean on foot to reach enemy territory," argued Zabuza. "It shouldn't be too difficult for most of our force members, but for some it may get lethal. In that case, the strong will have to shoulder the weak," advised Haku, earning a sigh from Amuri. "Troublesome," muttered the red-haired female swordmaster. Arguments and suggestions were breaking out across the entire force, with every member, be they senior or junior, interested in voicing their opinions. Ino saw Naruto close his eyes before releasing a short amount of killing intent that made everyone stop. The 501st and the other swordsmen instantly went on alert when they all felt the power surge in their surroundings. To everyone's surprise, a massive wall of water rose from the sea. It spanned across the entire coast in length and was nearly 30 feet in height. Most surprisingly, it was stable. Mangetsu couldn't hide his smirk when he saw Naruto standing on top of that wave with his 2 fingers raised. "Hop on," instructed the blonde-haired commander. Ino was left speechless even as their entire force cheered enthusiastically. All around her, their comrades charged forward to take up positions over that wall of water. Instead of running across the ocean, all they had to do now was keep themselves steady over that wave while it carried them across. Of course, such a journey would involve extreme control and caution to be invoked by the creator of this jutsu. Judging from Naruto's lack of visible pain or stress was truly surprising, not just for her, but for Haku, as well, who was staring at their commander in a new light. Even among Kiri shinobi, such mastery over water is found among only a handful shinobi. The Mizukage being one such fighter, but Naruto being an operative from Yuzu makes him least capable of wielding such power. His strength lies in fire and wind, which is prominent among most Uzumaki warriors. Nor is he a warrior of Kiri, who have natural talent with water element. Let's go, Hunter. Ino was brought out of her thoughts when Haku called out to her. Realizing they were the last ones left to join, both ladies nodded at each other before rushing forward to join their remaining comrades who had now all taken up positions over that giant wave. When everyone was in position, Naruto's voice boomed across the entire force. Maintain balance with the water at all costs. Leave the rest to me. He was about to summon a large amount of his chakra when he felt two hands being placed upon his shoulders, two across his back and two blades touching his legs. Looking back, he saw it was Mangetsu and Haku who had placed their hands over his shoulders. Amuri and Jinpachi had their hands placed over his back, and Zabuza, along with Kisame, had placed their swords at his legs. "Can't let you steal all the shine," said Zabuza with a grin. Even behind that mask, Mangetsu caught a tiny smile arriving on Naruto's lips as the remaining swordsmen all channeled their chakra inside their commander, who then joined his hands together. The entire 501st cheered when the giant wave stormed forward, cutting across the ocean at breathtaking speeds and bringing them more and more closer to their inevitable fight. 2 days later, the 7 ninja swordsmen and the top officers of the 501st had decided to make camp at a remote island barely 50 miles off the coast of Osaka City. Just an hour's march away was the enemy city defended by thousands of Special Forces ninja. It was one of Kumogakure's strongholds, one many believed to be unconquerable. "We have nearly 800 fighters in our ranks, not including the 7 of you," said one of the Umbu officers, who was in charge of a large contingent of troops. "The enemy has 3 or 4 times those numbers if we include the Kinkaku battalion. We are at a heavy disadvantage not just in strength, but knowing the terrain as well. This will be a difficult battle," commented Ao, the leading officer for the entire 501st. Naruto stared at the man who was expertly covering the Byakugan behind a simple eye patch. Even now, the same officer was silently trying to gauge his power with the hidden eye. "What is your plan, Commander?" asked Kisame amusedly. "Before you tell us your strategy, I would like to introduce someone," said Ao honestly. Before anyone could say something, another ninja entered inside the tent. Naruto's eyes slightly widened when he sensed the underlying sea of dark chakra within the woman who now stood before him. She was a beauty. He would give her that, and many other men in the room, including Mangetsu and Jinpachi, blushed. But there were others who were just as wary as Naruto, for they had sensed her hidden dark power. The kunoichi had long and beautiful auburn hair and an attractive figure that stuck very well across her blue-colored dress. Her green eyes were full of mischief, but deep down there lurked an edge in them. There was a traditional katana at her back, her skin being extremely fair and her chakra swirling around her body playfully. Her gaze directly connected with the blue eyes of the commander as she gave him a slight bow. "I am Mei Terumi, heir to the Terumi clan and Jinchuriki of the Six Tails." Naruto didn't miss how everyone in the room had tensed as Mei Terumi finished her introduction. It was a natural reaction to a Jinchuriki's presence. But in those nervous gazes, he also saw quite a lot of scorn and even hatred for a woman who was supposed to be their comrade. Their eyes clearly showed they saw her as a weapon or a creature of evil. Being born in a village with no-tailed beasts made him unable to understand these feelings. However, he could understand what it meant to be different from others. To have a power that made people fear you, he could understand that very well. "No matter what the others say, for me you are a great shinobi." A faint smile came upon his lips as he remembered the heart-warming words of his little brother who had believed in him, loved him when everyone had given up on him. Maybe it was those connected feelings and shared bond that made him walk towards Mei, who was now kneeling before him. Mei blinked in surprise when the commander himself knelt to her level, much to everyone's surprise, and offered her his hand. "Call me Naruto. I hope we can work together," he said with a pleasant smile. Mei connected her own hand with his and couldn't help but feel the positive emotions surrounding this man. Everyone around her was nervous, angry, disgusted, and even afraid, but not this man. In this raging sea of emotions around her, he was like a small but peaceful island where she could find refuge. Even if she didn't know him, a part of him wanted to trust him and follow him. "Pleased to meet you," she greeted him with a small smile, as he helped her stand back on her own feet. She was disappointed when he broke their contact and returned back to his place at the center of the table. May couldn't help but see how soon he had composed himself. Gone was that friendly smile, which was now replaced by a calm, composed, and even cold look as he looked at the map of Osaka City placed before him. "It would seem Naidame thought a step ahead of us all. That's the Mizukage," praised Naruto honestly, as he gave May a small nod. "How do you proceed, Nanadame?" asked May with an amused smile. A small blush crept across Naruto's cheeks, which was thankfully hidden by his face mask. He didn't know how to respond to that cryptic remark or the not-so-innocent way May was looking at him. Fortunately, Ino was not present in this meeting, or it could have been quite embarrassing. Even few officers and most of the swordsmen grinned as he was outsmarted. A light cough escaped his lips as he focused his attention back on the map. "Our ultimate goal is the sheer destruction of this city and the annihilation of the military forces stationed here. However, that is a difficult task. May, how far are you able to control your Biju's powers?" asked Naruto seriously. "I can control up to 3 tails. Anything beyond that, and I lose control," she admitted honestly, some worry easily visible on her pretty face. "We cannot have that, so you shall stick close to me. I plan to use your aid wherever our forces are getting massacred, and will stay close to keep you from going out of control," promised Naruto without any hesitation. "Can you even do that?" An out-of-control Jinchuriki is a walking disaster which does not discriminate between friend and foe, warned Amuri, directing a suspicious look at the Terumi clan heir, who glared back at her coldly. "Channel your chakra, May." May hesitated before deciding to obey that command. She started channeling her chakra and was surprised when Naruto gestured her to increase it. Complying, she nearly started summoning January 4th th of her power when she gasped and looked at her belly. A dull ache bellowed from within her body, and her eyes widened in shock when dark marks started spreading across her body. "Fuinjutsu." She, along with everyone else, looked at Naruto in surprise, who had now joined his hands together into the ram seal. "That handshake," whispered Mangetsu in realization. Zabuza and Jinpachi narrowed their eyes towards their commander, now being able to see him in a completely different light. Perhaps the Mizukage had seen something which none of them could. "You marked her the moment you touched her. You're quick, Lord Seventh," praised Kisame sincerely. May was trying her best to shake off the control that was brutally suppressing her chakra. She cursed herself for underestimating Naruto. Her father had warned her to be careful around him, warning her that he was an accomplished Umbu officer. Now she knew why. Through the seal, she could feel his chakra invading her body and clearly crushing her own power. This was not the power of any ordinary ninja or someone from a civilian family. Even among shinobi families, only a handful of ninja clans had mastered the art of controlling Jinchuriki and their tailed beasts. In any case, she decided never to let her guard down around Naruto. Thankfully, he stopped suppressing her power the moment she halted gathering her chakra. A small bead of sweat rolled down her forehead, and she gritted her teeth in frustration on seeing Naruto looking unfazed as he focused back upon the map, as if nothing had happened. Such was their difference in strength, even if she had the 6 tails power within her. Naruto studied the terrain carefully, as did the other officers around him. Osaka was a coastal city that had a medium-sized port where merchant ships and military transports regularly docked. On its eastern and western sides, it was surrounded by large mountains, while its northern border had a vast open grassland where any movement could be seen from miles away. "For groups of 200 each," declared Naruto, gathering the attention of everyone present. The first group made up of purely Umbu Black Ops and Hunter Ninjas. They shall be the vanguard force that shall battle the bulk of enemy forces under the command of the 7 great swordsmen. The second group comprised of elite jounin, preferably fighters well versed in lightning and earth style. This force will divide itself into two halves with each climbing atop these mountains on the eastern and western flanks surrounding the city. When I give the signal, they are to launch aerial bombardment all over the city. The third group made up of skilled jounin. Their task shall be to loot as many valuables, be it money, resources, food stories, weapons, and intel. Apart from these tasks, they are to also set up escape routes from where our forces can retreat if they get trapped. Ao, I want you to command this task force. The fourth group will made up of Chunin, led by newly appointed Jounin. They shall be the reserve force that shall guard our rear against any enemy counterattack. When he was finished explaining his plan, he looked up to see if there were any objections and was pleased when there were none. If they had, then they kept it well hidden. It was not the common shinobi he was worried about, but his own group from where he was expecting much resistance. "Do we have any strategy to engage the Kinkaku?" asked Zabuza seriously. "Only the 7 of us shall engage them. Under no circumstances do I want our shinobi to make contact with them. Ao, as the lead officer of the 501st, I want to make this very clear to you. If anyone apart from Mei or the 7 swordsmen make contact with them, they are as good as dead," warned Naruto, much to the Umbu's shock. "Surely, you are exaggerating a bit, Lord 7th, whispered Ao hesitantly. "I have faced them before and I barely survived that encounter," confessed Naruto, as he lowered a part of his jounin vest where a nasty and deep-edged scar spanned all across the upper portion of his chest. "What are they?" asked Haku hesitantly. "Masters of ninja arts, but more dangerously. They are a force of warriors who are able to control Biju chakra just like the Gold and Silver Brothers. When Konoha sold the tailed beasts to various nations at the start of the Hidden Villages era, Kumogakure was not satisfied. They believed it too risky to grant such enormous power in the hands of just one individual who could be killed, captured, turn rogue, or just be a disappointment. So they started a program where their most elite ninjas could also learn to control the tailed beast power to some extent. The Gold and Silver Brothers who have the Kyubi chakra in them were tasked with training this force. Naturally, there were many casualties, but Kumogakure never cared about the price, but about the ultimate power it would grant their village. After a decade of experiments, they successfully bred an entire company of shinobi capable of using such power. That force is known as the Kinkaku, explained Naruto in detail. He looked across the room hoping these people took his words to heart or risk paying the ultimate price. Thankfully, most of them, including the 7 swordsmen, were considering his words quite seriously. "If what you say is true, then we cannot let our forces battle against them," agreed Mangetsu. "Even so, battles are truly unpredictable. If some of them manage to slip past us and head directly towards our forces, warned Haku. "Then they'll all be warned Aim Yuri, but was stopped when Naruto slammed his fist against the table. Ao, along with the other common officers, directly came face to face with the determined blue eyes as they stared into their very souls. "As your commander, I will protect each and every one of you with my life. I won't let my comrades die at their hands," promised Naruto fiercely, hoping that they would believe in him. "Not again. The Mizukage placed our lives in your hands, Lord 7th. I may not know you personally, but your eyes reflect your desire to protect the men under your command. I can respect that, and so we shall all believe in you," promised Ao with a small smile, much to Naruto's relief, who gave a nod of acknowledgement. They went on to discuss the details of their plans for another hour before retiring to their quarters to rest and prepare for their fateful battle. Naruto stood before the 501st alongside the other swordsmen. The skies had darkened as dark clouds had hidden the moon behind them. Yet even in the darkness, he could see the faces of the men and women in front of him. Soon, they all would venture into their toughest battle. Many wouldn't come back alive. Many would never be the same again. This battle would change them. For better or worse, only time would tell. As their leader, it was his responsibility to make them ready for the obstacle in front of them. "We're ready, Lord 7th, reported Ao confidently, as all 800 warriors stood at attention. "I don't have much to say. I wish I knew each one of you personally, and the opposite as well. Maybe after this battle we can all have some drinks together and have a blast of our victory," said Naruto with a small smile, earning brief chuckles from quite a few of the Kiri shinobi. However, there were many others who, while silent, looked far from comfortable. "Sir, please take some of us with you. We are expendable. The 7 ninja swordsmen aren't," argued one of the Chunin, who looked to be barely 15 years old. "No, you're not," answered Naruto frankly, a harsh tone creeping into his voice as he looked at the men around him. "Never think like that. You're loyal soldiers of Kiri, the best hope of our people. I hope you have faith in me and my plan, while I shall also have faith in each and every one of you. Look after each other in battle. Follow your training. Give it your best. But most of all, never lose faith in yourself or the cause you are fighting for, no matter the odds. As your commander, I shall clear the way for you. And know this, dead or alive, I will bring you home. That is my promise to each and every one of you," said Naruto sincerely. "So shall I," promised Mangetsu with a smile. "Me too," said Haku earnestly. "Guess, we'll just do all the heavy work so you pups don't get into too much trouble," grinned Amiri with a feral smile. "Leave the heavy lifting to us and these big boys," said Zabuza with a smirk, as he pointed at his huge blade. Kisame did the same while Jinpachi just gave a cunning smile. Naruto's gaze connected with Ino for a moment as they both gave fleeting nods to each other. As he turned to join his fellow swordsmen, Naruto saw Mei and many of the Kiri shinobi staring at him with much less skepticism than before. Maybe he even saw respect in their eyes for him. "Ayo, wait for my signal," commanded Naruto, earning a nod from the older man. Mangetsu had to pause when his partner stopped. The Hozuki clan heir and Naruto himself had teamed up together while the rest of them had also divided themselves. Haku and Amiri were one team 1. Kisame, Zabuza, and Jinpachi were team 2, while Naruto and Mangetsu were team 3. Team 1 and 2 had been tasked with dealing out the maximum damage across the city, bearing the brunt of the enemy power. Team 3 were tasked with noting down the enemy's counterattack strategy and ultimately finding holes that would help their troops to break the enemy. However, for that to open, they first needed to enter the city. "What is it?" asked Mangetsu to his partner, who bent down and placed his palm on the sea's surface. "There is a barrier up ahead. A weak one, but something that will alert the enemy of our presence even before we step foot into the city," said Naruto seriously. "I cannot see or feel it. Can you deactivate it?" questioned Mangetsu, wondering if his new teammates' power in the sealing arts were as great as the Mizukage had said they were. To his surprise, Mangetsu felt a slight shift in their surrounding as Naruto got up on his feet and looked at him. "It is done. Signal the others to move in," directed Naruto, earning a nod from Mangetsu. The younger swordsman raised his fingers, and soon enough a thick mist started to form around them, which slowly started creeping towards Osaka City. Naruto and his partner calmly walked through the mist, even as they both felt the presence of their fellow swordsmen rushing forward at alarming speeds towards the city. As they advanced further, Naruto felt the presence of Kiri shinobi taking up positions across the mountains surrounding Osaka, while their remaining comrades were following the trail left by the 7 ninja swordsmen. They were advancing slowly, waiting to strike swiftly once the signal was given. "How long before they know what is going on and counterattack?" asked Mangetsu hesitantly. 3 minutes. Mangetsu blinked in shock at his partner's reply. A part of his heart didn't want to believe the enemy to be so capable, but another part of him knew Naruto had faced these warriors in the past and spoke from experience. It was best to have faith in him and follow his lead. "I'll take care of that," reassured Naruto, as he raised 2 of his fingers. Mangetsu was fascinated when heaps upon heaps of ash started to leak from Naruto's entire body and soon started to blend easily into the thick mist. Within minutes, Mangetsu could feel that power spreading quickly block by block until entire districts started to get flooded. Both of the swordsmen advanced further until they swiftly crossed the docks in a blur and took up positions on top of a warehouse rooftop that gave a decent overview of the sprawling city ahead of them. Mangetsu saw that Team 1 and Team 2 had also taken up positions and were waiting for their signal. Mangetsu winced when he saw the thick mist unleashed by him now covering half of the city, and in it was carefully hidden the ash being released and controlled by Naruto. Having already seen a small glimpse of the former Umbu's power, Mangetsu was truly wary of the atrocity that was about to be unleashed. Innocents will die, warned Mangetsu, knowing he was just as responsible for the deaths today as his comrade beside him. To his surprise, there was no hesitation in Naruto's now red eyes. What is he? Only then Kumogakure shall know true pain, said Naruto icily, as he clasped his hands together. Through it all, he felt them. Men, women, and children, most of whom were peacefully sleeping in their beds. None of them had any idea about the calamity that was surrounding them at the very moment. He could feel their love, their dreams, their fears. He could feel it all. Just for a moment, it made him hesitate as his heart tried to search for another way. Until he remembered what these people had did to him, his family, his friends, his comrades. Their blind ambition to acquire more and more power, to support those who threatened to engulf this world into a never-ending war, to turn a blind eye to the pain they inflicted upon other people who had never done anything to wrong them. Mangetsu tensed as he felt even more and more ash leaking out of Naruto's body to the point that now half of the city was shrouded in his power. So, you're set on doing this, Naruto. Those red eyes lacked any mercy as Naruto extended both of his arms towards the city. I will never forget my little brother's pain. Ash release, explosion. Mangetsu's vision went blank. Southern District. Awoke up in alarm as the very ground beneath his feet trembled. Already he could feel a great disturbance in the city as he rushed straight out of the wall of his house, only to be greeted by a scene of devastation. Almost half of the city had literally vanished. In its place, all that remained was scorched earth, whose very soil had turned black with the ashes of all those who had perished in this tragedy. Not even debris of houses or buildings had survived. The very air itself was burning, and it was then that A felt a presence. It was one at first, which soon turned to two, then three, until there were 7 signatures, he recognized, most of whom were quickly moving through the devastated city. Another dark-skinned man dressed in Umbu gear appeared by his side instantly. Umbu platoons are moving across various sectors, but so far we have no survivors. It's as if they all just vanished in that explosion. What is this, eh? Asked the Umbu leader. Why didn't the Kinkaku sense anything disturbing? Where the hell are they? Yelled they in fury. Most of them are accompanying your father, Lord Raikage, in the battle against the Hyugas, which started yesterday. The few that remain are currently guarding the prison. We cannot afford to lose those prisoners. It would seem this is Konoha's revenge for what we did to their Hokage. They launched a massive assault, drawing our Raikage and the Kinkaku while a strike force reached here, suggested the Umbu leader. I will crush the bastards who did this, yelled A, as he channeled lightning all over his muscled body. You will do no such thing. Guard the prison and send as many Kinkaku to the front lines. Until then, the Umbu Black Ops will hold off the enemy. Those are the standing orders given to us by the Raikage before he left, and I will not allow you to disobey them, announced the demon-masked Umbu leader firmly. A clenched his fist when a foul chakra started to leak from the Umbu leader's body. His rough silver hair grew longer until it reached his waist, and the very man started to transform into the fox from whom he had derived his power. Kinkaku, make them pay, said A bitterly, as he vanished. Zabuza grinned maniacally when he saw literally hundreds of Umbu leap from each and every corner of the burning city. Kisame, Jinpachi. His 2 comrades laughed as Kisame went through a couple of hand seals while Jinpachi unleashed his own blade as the enemy forces got closer. Water style, water wave. Kisame unleashed a massive wave of water from his mouth that nearly swept the ash-ridden ground across all directions and made the Kumo Umbu halt their advance in favor of scrambling for cover. Hidden mist jutsu, silent death, whispered Zabuza. Jinpachi wildly jumped in the air, unleashing the full extent of his lethal sword as hundreds of explosive seals materialized across the blade. Before anybody could react, the world was deafened again in a series of explosions that tore dozens of Umbu to shreds and injuring several others fatally. Even more painful screams and hurried shouts followed as the mist only grew thicker as one after another more and more Umbu went silent. Zabuza grinned as he tore 2 female Umbu in half with his massive sword as he watched Kisame do the same to his enemies by shredding them to pieces. Both swordsmen vanished before the other Umbu around them could see or even sense them. A few sensory types barely managed to raise their blades, but were horrified when their weapons were instantly destroyed against the mighty swords named Samahata and Kubokirabocho. Across another part of the city, lightning clashed against lightning as Amuri Ringo squared off against two entire platoons of Kumo Umbu. She looked to her left to see a dome of ice walls surrounding a squad of Umbu warriors. They tried to defend themselves as Haku showered them with poison needles. To her surprise, most of them were blocked by the expert swordsmanship of the Kumo shinobi. Attack the mirrors. Haku grinned as her enemies fired lightning arcs against her ice mirrors, destroying quite a few of them through brute force. Seeing an opening, the Umbu tried to break free only to meet their end when Haku emerged from one of the nearby mirrors, and her needle sword skewed her enemies' vital spots mercilessly, thereby ending their lives. However, her triumph was short-lived, as no matter how many she or Amuri took down, more and more shinobi were approaching towards their location. Mangetsu had thought he had seen many horrors in his life. Growing up in Kiri should have made him strong enough to deal with the atrocities of their world, but nothing could have ever prepared him for what he was seeing right now. So many souls had perished instantly, most of whom didn't even know what happened as their lives were snuffed out. Half of the city had just turned to ash in the blink of an eye, and the one who had caused it was standing in front of Mangetsu, panting harshly. This was not an act of strategy or necessity, but one done out of deep-seated hatred. "Why?" asked Mangetsu hesitantly, taking one step away from this man. It was as if he was staring at a different person who had come to life, taking over Naruto's body. Mangetsu could not believe that the man who had went so far to protect his own men would be willing to commit such a cruel act against civilians. "This is my justice. If the many stay silent and allow the evil and corrupt to carry on unchecked, then this world shall never know peace." The citizens of this country stood by and supported the first Raikage who started the first great ninja war that caused so much pain. They stood by and allowed the second Raikage to be killed, a man who wanted peace not just for his own people, but for the world. They allowed their soldiers to murder the second Hokage and are now supporting the third Raikage who is threatening to destroy our world with his ambition by causing more war. "I will kill everyone in this city if that's what it takes for the people of this country to realize their mistakes, which has caused so much pain all over the world," explained Naruto tiredly. "That will make you no different than the ones you hate," replied Mangetsu calmly, earning a bittersweet smile from his partner. "My hands are already stained with so much blood. A little more wouldn't make a difference. Mangetsu, I know what I am doing is not noble, but this is the path I have chosen," said Naruto firmly, as he saw 1,000 Umbu now rushing towards the other swordsman. "The path of hatred that consumes your heart. Those eyes, I wonder if you are not somehow related to the Uchiha clan distantly," wondered Mangetsu to himself. "Mangetsu, it's time," ordered Naruto, as he unleashed several smoke bombs and threw them forcefully all over the city. The Umbu army halted their advance momentarily, fearing those bombs to be explosive in nature, but were relieved when all they released was red smoke. That relief soon turned to horror as the air around them started to whistle. Ginkaku couldn't see through the mist and smoke, but he could never forget that sound. "Take cover." His warning was too late, as all his men and women started screaming. The kunai, shuriken, and explosive tags showed no mercy to anyone as they cut everyone and everything down in their path. A cold smirk appeared on Naruto's lips as he saw the bulk of Kumo's Umbu forces pinned down by precise fire of ninja weapons and explosives from the mountains surrounding them on the west and east, where now Kiri ninjas had taken positions. However, the Kumo Umbu had now consolidated themselves under a powerful barrier erected by a demon-masked Umbu. Even so, they had lost quite a few of their comrades in the surprise attack. "You are just where I want you to be, Ginkaku." Naruto grabbed a fire rocket from his pouch and launched it in the air. As soon as the signal was given, the barrage of ninja weapons coming down from the mountains stopped. Before the Kumogakure shinobi could relax, they were now being bombarded by something more terrible than ninja weapons. "Earth-style carpet bombing," whispered Naruto. The few dozen Kiri shinobi that were skilled with earth style soon unleashed giant rocks from their mouths. The projectiles, already heavy in weight and large in shape, gained dangerous velocity as they rained down upon the trapped Umbu battalion from Kumogakure. Ginkaku roared as his once purple barrier turned red, increasing its strength and shaking off the onslaught of rock barrage. If not for his strength, the Umbu under his command would have suffered severe casualties. Even if they were being protected by the Silver Brother, the bulk of Osaka City's defensive force was currently trapped and unable to move. From the corner of his eye, Naruto saw the next part of his plan falling into place. He gestured to the mountain core to continue bombarding the trapped Kumo forces as he looked at Mangetsu, who now was leading the vanguard of their force. Surround them from all sides. Once that is done, I'll stop the bombardment. They'll be sloppy and out of shape for a few moments. That is your window to use the mist to inflict maximum casualties. Leave their commander to me, instructed Naruto, earning a grim nod from Mangetsu. Charge. Naruto watched as the Mizukige's only son lead the bulk of their own Umbu and hunter forces expertly. The other swordsmen joined him as they had massacred the initial defense force that had tried to stop him. Now with the bulk of their forces trapped, Kumogakure was in a bad position. Ayo, go and carry out your mission. Take everything of value from this city and make sure to prepare the contingency for when the Kinkaku arrive, ordered Naruto. It will be done, Lord Seventh, agreed the Umbu, as he bowed before commanding his force to move out. Naruto saw the rear guard of his forces had taken up positions across the docks and the outer sea, preventing any enemy force to surround them from behind. He looked to the front lines where the vanguard and the other swordsmen had now begun to surround the trapped Kumo forces. Somewhere in that mess was his wife. A part of him had not wanted to put her in danger, but knowing she would have hated him for stopping her from participating in that conflict had made him relent. It would seem your strategy is going exactly as planned. Even more better in my opinion, Lord Seventh, complimented a feminine voice. Do you approve of this? Asked Naruto curiously, earning a shrug from Meitarumi. It is brutal, but has practically crushed our enemy and saved our own losses to an extent. As our commander, my respect for you has increased. But as a human, what you have done here is unforgivable, whispered Mei, as she looked at half of the city which had now turned to ash. She watched as Naruto gave a nod accepting her judgment, which made her wonder what had this man gone through in life to make him capable of doing something like this and still be able to fight. She watched him give the command that halted the bombardment from their forces stationed on the mountains just as the conflict erupted fully between their vanguard, who descended upon the Kumogakure Umbu forces that tried to escape from the barrier. However, their victory was short-lived when they saw hundreds upon hundreds of Umbu forces emerging from secret bunkers hidden underground. Mei's eyes widened in horror as nearly 1,000 Kumogakure Umbu now emerged from the eastern and western ruins of the city and were now on their way to surround and demolish Kiri's vanguard. That sly Ginkaku, crafty as ever. In that case, she heard Naruto whisper with a smile. Soon enough, she was staring at another Naruto as both the clone and the original unleashed Muramasa in their right hand and its smaller Tanto-like version in the left hand. Mei, my clone shall handle the forces approaching from the west. Let's go and stop those incoming from the east, commanded Naruto. Very well, Lord Seventh, she complied with nod and saw him smirk. Try to keep up if you can, challenge Naruto. Mei blinked when the man in front of her vanished in a dark flash. Briskly walked through the almost deserted corridor of the city prison. Not an hour ago, it was fully manned and protected by a small Kinkaku force. But now most of them were gone, commanded by A himself to go and defend the city against the enemy invaders. The dark-skinned man didn't know how the enemy managed to not just reach them, but launch such a surprise attack as well. And only one man, in A's opinion, could have the answers to the questions he had. He slammed the door to the prison cell wide open and was relieved to see the older man still tied to the cross. Nearly 100 seals were imprinted all across the cell, many upon the man's own body to stop him from ever being a threat again. He was wearing nothing but dark pants while the rest of his body was fully exposed. his chest a picture of the horrors inflicted by the Kinkaku as they tried to extract maximum information from the man who was considered to be one of the most powerful shinobi in the world. Yet even so, most of his wounds healed quickly with only scars remaining that showed what he had endured. However, it was his mind that fascinated A. Having endured weeks of torture, starvation, nearly being drowned over and over again, assaulted by illusions of his loved ones being killed, this man had refused to break, never divulging a single secret of his village. I could not help but respect and fear that strength. "You seem to be in trouble," whispered the older man with a light cough. "You, on the other hand, seem almost happy. Tell me, what do you know about this attack?" demanded A. The prisoner with stark white hair gave him one of the coldest smiles that A had ever seen in his life. "What do you know, Senju Tobarama?"